Hey guys, welcome to Politically Provoked, an interactive podcast where we host debates, panels, and interviews. If this is your first time joining us, don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well as the notification bell to keep up to date with all our future debates and panels. We are primarily on YouTube, but you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Discord, BitChute, TikTok, and Instagram. All the information is in the banner below. We also have a link tree you can find in the description, or you can just search Politically Provoked and we should pop right up. Politically Provoked is a neutral ground where people from across the political spectrum can either duke it out in a debate or just have a casual discussion in one of our panels. Either way, we try to represent both left and right-wing views on every episode. I'm your left-wing host, Brittany, and this is your right-wing host, Todd. How are you, Todd?
Doing good, Britt. How are you?
I'm doing good. All right, so we got a fun panel for you guys tonight. We are going to be talking about economic versus social issues. Do one or the other drive people more, and which ones? So we have on tonight two groypers and two lefties, so let's bring them on. Let's bring on Finley first. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great. As you can tell, I was not
totally ready for that.
Yeah, just sitting here waiting in the wings. But you know
so
what?
Yeah, you want to introduce yourself, tell people where you lie in the political spectrum, and where people can find you.
I'm Finley. I'm a university student. I guess I'm left. And if you desperately want to follow me somewhere, I guess you can find me on Twitter, but I don't really do like social media or anything.
Okay, and you can find him here. All right, so next up, let's bring on G. Sneed. How are you?
Hello, how's it going?
Good. So yeah,
Can
you
you
want
hear
to
me
introduce
all right?
Fucking
Okay.
A,
Sorry
guys.
about that. I'm lagging a little.
All right. So yeah, you want. Oh my God, you're lagging a lot. I think.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, I can hear you, but you're lagging quite a bit, I think, because you are talking when I talk. So I'm going to stop talking. Introduce yourself. Tell people where you lie in the political spectrum.
Okay. Sorry about that. I am generally right wing. I'm like Laura Loomer, but less retarded and smarter. So that's basically it. You can find me here, and that's it.
All right, thank you. And now, next up, let's bring on a nihilist. How are you?
I am. How are you?
Good. So you know the drill. Where you lie on the political spectrum, where people can find you.
Yes, so I am sort of a dirtbag leftist. I have a YouTube channel where I grift and make content of ever deteriorating quality. That's it.
All right, and now next up is somebody brand new to Politically Provoked. Let's bring on Mayo. How are you?
Yo, hey, what's going on?
So yeah, if you want to introduce yourself and tell people where you lie on the political spectrum.
Sure. Well, I identify as a gamer. I'd say I'm closer to left wing on the economics, but that's less important to me. I'm, the taxing issues and whatnot are, I don't think would drive society.
Your volume's a little bit quiet. I don't know if you want to get closer to the mic or.
Is this better?
Yeah, much better. Good job. All right, keep going. Sorry.
Cool. Yeah. So that's my economics, but more importantly are the social issues to me. I'm socially conservative. I am against feminism and globalism, which I think are both forms of a larger cultural attack against the heritage and culture of the historic American people. I'm a Christian, and I think that Christendom has largely defined Western European culture for the last 1,000 years and brought about all the historic achievements which Americans and those with Europe roots celebrate today, landing on the moon. I think that these issues are way more important than economics. Cultural issues is that defines a people more than any kind of material items or values.
Oh,
Okay.
are we getting into opening statements already?
Okay. So with panels, we don't technically really need an opening statement, but we can just jump right in. So, Nihilist, do you have an opening statement?
Oh yeah, I just typed something up real quick.
Okay.
I'll just read from my speech right here.
All right,
So,
go for it.
I've always felt that comparing the importance of economic policy to social policy is like comparing government regulation to liberty or comparing feminism to men's rights. It's based on a false premise that social and economic forces are in fundamental opposition. But If I had to pick one, there's no doubt in my mind that economic policy is far more important. This is because cultural ideas are always informed by the material conditions surrounding them. For example, chattel slavery had been practiced for thousands of years before we abolished it. Everybody didn't simultaneously have a moral epiphany. The founding fathers knew slavery was wrong, but their Enlightenment ideals didn't compel them to do anything about it. It was capitalists in northern states who first realized that instead of providing food, shelter, and health care for the slaves they own, it was cheaper to simply pay free men starvation wages. Only then could we start moralizing to the South, where powerful business interests still benefited off plantation slavery. Same with veganism today. Everybody knows killing animals for pleasure is wrong, but it'll probably take the impending climate disaster and overpopulation for us to abolish large-scale meat production. Economic justice doesn't guarantee social justice, but we still have to fight for it. But it does remove major obstacles in the way. And that's basically it.
Wow, look at you. Okay. Well, yeah, so I mean, basically when we're doing this topic, I know for something I've seen a little bit is that especially with Groypers, that social issues seem to drive them a lot more than economic issues. I've heard Bernie say things like that if you solve the economic issues, you will also solve the social issue. Like people won't be as concerned with that. I don't know if that is, I mean, I don't know, Maya, where are you on this? Why don't you?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, as I sort of said in the beginning, I think that culture, civilization.
You cut out there.
You're cutting out a bit.
Okay.
We're all having a rough start, you guys. We'll get there.
I've got an option. I'll get there. 1 sec.
Should I take over?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So anyway, in the meantime, I think, yeah, you're right. It is a bit of a false dichotomy, economics versus social issues, but it's also a bit of a misnomer to say that, oh, well, you can just get rid of most of the or all of the social issues by fixing the economic issues, because I mean, there are plenty of places where economic equality is less and they still have social issues. There's plenty of areas where the minimum wage is higher and they still have social issues. I know it's not like a one-to-one, but surely we can have economic issues be solved and they don't have to be tied to social issues. Like, people do not want necessarily, like, according to opinion polls, people want minimum wage to be raised federally more than they want, like, transgender acceptance. So we get one, but we don't get the other. So that I find that interesting.
Yo, I'm back. Sorry about that.
Okay, so yeah, go. Let's see if that's better. Sometimes actually signing out and signing in will help it, but I don't know if you did that on purpose. So
Yeah, I did.
Okay. All right. So what were you saying?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I think that culture is what defines a society, a people, an entire civilization. And that if you start, knocking out the slats of civilization itself, things as foundational as the family, the roles of men and women, with taking mothers out of the home, telling them they're empowered by becoming career women instead of raising a successful next generation of great people. It's all backwards. It's an inversion, and it's all wrong. And we can see the decay already taking place. We see the divorce rates are only going up. The out of wedlock birth rates are going up. As contraception and birth control and abortions are all going up. We see all of these things, and we see, along with divorces, 90% of homeless men come from fatherless homes. When the divorcees are college educated women, 90% of the time it's them initiating the divorces. So, all of this paints a very clear picture to me that, clearly there's something wrong with, going wrong with this whole feminist experiment, and that we need to return to the traditional values under which civilization thrived instead of decaying.
So Finley, you actually had a debate with Wurzelroot, kind of similar to what he was just talking about. And I know you also mentioned the false dichotomy. So why don't you go into what you were saying to me earlier?
Yeah. Basically, I think that the delineation between social issues and economic issues and asking us to pick one. Probably, I mean, it seems kind of silly because on one hand, how do you even decide what's a social issue, what's an economic issue? For example, there's things like poverty where we could say that there are social solutions, providing more attentive, available parents or better schooling. There are social issues like crime, for example, that we could provide economic solutions for. And that's not even to say, and that doesn't even attack the fact that a lot of the biggest issues in society, as a nihilist pointed out, are rooted both in social and economic causes. So the dichotomy to me doesn't make a lot of sense and also isn't super useful. But the other thing is, I did a lot of reading on this when I was going to talk to Wurzelroot, and I basically disagree with every single thing that Mia said. So one of the biggest things that you find when you look into the relationship between maternal work and maternal presence and the outcomes of a child are actually that the amount that a mother works, whether they're working or not, doesn't really affect the outcomes of a child a lot, nor does whether or not they participate in other forms of care, like getting care from daycares, from grandparents, from babysitters, all sorts of measures of success, be they like educational, emotional, or social competency, happiness, all sorts of these things. They don't really seem to change based on whether or not the mom is working or isn't working. Now, there's a bunch of other information that I can go into through here. I didn't know we were going to be talking about this all of a sudden, so I didn't brush up on a lot of my research. But the idea that women working is having some sort of catastrophically horrible effect on the children that they're growing up, it doesn't really seem to be borne out by the data. The same is true of divorce. There's not really much of a relationship between whether or not parents are divorced and whether or not the child does well after you control for a bunch of other relevant factors. It's very possible in modern day to have a stable 2-parent household where a kid goes back and forth, or maybe is raised by their parent who receives financial support from the more financially well-off parent who isn't interested in raising them, as it often ends up going. And then the last thing is that what a lot of the biggest problems that we get from single mother households is an illusory correlation, not an illusory correlation, like an illusory causative relationship. And you learn about a lot of this in like psychology or statistics, all sorts of things. When you have A and B correlated, you're tempted to say A causes B or B causes A, when really both can be caused by C. So in this case, one of the biggest drivers of both single parent households and of crime, homelessness, poverty, or crime, homelessness, like general bad living conditions. And I'm sure a nihilist is going to love what I'm about to say, but a lot of it is poverty. So when you control for that, a lot of, the richer single parent households or the middle class or the upper class single parent households, they're not turning out kids who like inexplicably become like drug dealers or become homeless or become junkies or anything like that. A lot of it is really just down to this third variable problem that people don't really like to talk about or know much about.
Okay.
And that I guess would be it.
Well, to that, if I may respond.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Go
I'd
ahead.
say so. The claims so far are that a child growing up in a divorced household has no effect on the well-being of like the mental health and development of the child, and that
Well,
like
so
government
I think
daycares and institutions, and they turn out just as fine. I think you're losing every mom in the chat right now who knows how much of an important role that they play in nurturing, caring, especially in the first couple of years of an infant's life.
This is actually really interesting because what studies have actually found is a lot of the time mothers who work actually won't cut back on the amount of time that they spend at home. They'll spend an equal amount of time as non-working mothers caring for their children, doing housework, and so on. It's been a common feminist talking point for a while, something called the second shift, where essentially all of the domestic expectations that are placed on women by society and by men and so on, they stay there even when women work, and women continue to try and meet those expectations.
And I'll tell you why that happens. It happens because these societal expectations, it turns out, are actually like biological needs. And it's just how the biology works out that women need to be moms and stay with the babies. It's
Sure.
I don't make the rules. It's just how things happen to work out.
Do you have
And
any
it turns
evidence
out
for
that
that?
they're way better suited to it than men. They score higher on agreeability, which is associated with nurturing. They like have babies, like wherever babies come from. I don't know if we need to have that talk, but yeah, there are fundamental differences, and they express themselves in our behavior, in our tendencies. It's and you can test across the sociologists have basically across like every metric. And they found differences, major differences between men and women, even in the most egalitarian societies in the world. And the like Norway, these countries where they try as hard as they can to make things equal for everybody, equality of opportunity, as they say. You find like 19-to-1 ratios in engineers to nurses, male to women, and the opposite, the inverse effect in nursing. It's just what people choose, given freedom to do whatever they want. It turns out they are better suited to those things, and the people who knew that's common sense were just kind of like right the whole time. Go figure.
Okay.
Well,
Well, whether we
what
say
you're
it's
saying-
genetic or
freedom.
biological or
Oh,
sorry,
really
do
quick.
you mind
Wait,
if
go,
I just
go,
if I
Fin,
just
yeah, go Finley, and
Go
then
ahead.
and then an Nihilist,
Yeah.
and then G Sneed.
super quick? I'll let you two go instantly. Basically, whether we say it's genetic, whether we say it's societal, whether we say it's biological, that doesn't really have much bearing on my argument. My argument would be that women working and mothers working doesn't really take away any of the time that they spend with their children. It doesn't take away the duties that they fulfill at home, and you seem to agree with that. So I don't really see why you would disagree that or disagree with my assertion that women are still effective mothers while they're working. I think a good example would be my own mother, who's a doctor who works really, really hard and basically comes home and for several years basically did all of the normal mom things with us, even though she just finished like a 10-hour or 12-hour or whatever shift. Like, again, second shift, look it up. This is a pretty common thing. And then I'll pass it over to an Nihilist and G Sneed.
Okay, so I find something wrong with what you're saying in that you take some sort of information about general gender roles and then you pass it off as something that ought to be. I mean, for example, there's evidence that gay couples, two men, can be just as effective at parenting as a man and a woman or two women, right? You'd expect that if women were such good parents that you just want lesbian couples taking care of all the children. Of course, I don't expect that you actually believe that. So I mean, yeah, so and of course the other thing is there's individual variance between all people. Even if we were to accept that women are generally better caretakers than men, it would still be the case that I'd expect a man who wants to be a parent to be a better parent than a woman who doesn't want to be a parent. So I don't see why you complaining about people having choice makes any sense in this regard.
Okay, so G Sneed, do you want to get in there, and then we'll go back to Maya. You're muted, G.
Thank you. If people, when they are most economically free, end up choosing to make the equality, quote unquote, worse, the gender equality worse, then why would in any situation increasing the economic situations make it better? We saw that in Sweden and Norway, like Mio was mentioning. And then also the whole thing with the second shift is that that's not really a good thing, I would say. I would just pay women to stay home. Like, why not?
Man, everyone's internet tonight is really shitty, but go ahead, Mayo.
Yeah, but piggybacking off of what Sneed said, that's essentially my answer to the what the second shift thing is. You can't tell me, that taking 40 hours out of a mother's week, and dedicating that to working a shift at some corporation, thanks Walmart for the however much an hour. Or Amazon, or whoever the 5 employers left are in the country after all these lockdowns. It's gonna be. You can't tell me with a straight face that doesn't affect the upbringing of the children, having mom gone that much longer when she doesn't have to be. I mean, here's what it boils down to is when you push women into the workforce in these staggering numbers that we've seen since the 1970s.
Wait, who is pushing women into the workforce? Is it people telling women that you must go work and then they just obey, or
Department
is
of
it because
Labor has been putting in programs like since the 70s to make it. I mean, every single textbook has written about this. The feminists will tell you all about it, how much progress has been done in getting women into the workforce and making spaces and trying making policies, affirmative action type stuff. That stuff is real, and they're doing it. They call it progressive, and I would call it a problem, because essentially when women are entering the workforce in these staggering numbers compared to every civilization in the past several thousand years, it essentially cuts wages in half. And if you cut wages in half, you eliminate the possibility for a single income family. So a father can now it's equal work for equal pay. And I'll tell you what it used to be is a man should make enough to support a family. And we don't have that at all anymore.
So you're saying the fact that workers aren't paid enough is because women are entering the workforce?
Well,
This
what
is a very
happens when
slippery
you
slope
double
you
the
can go
workforce?
down.
What happens when you double the workforce?
Then
Well,
shouldn't we
okay.
be like discouraging childbirth and stuff like that? Shouldn't we be saying, okay, so let's not have any children? But then you complain
Yeah.
about abortion and birth control. This seems
Yeah, well,
contradictory.
I
Right,
think
because what I'm saying is it's fundamentally not anti-children, it's pro-children, right? You're trying to say that women should be a part of the means of production, and I'm saying they should be the means of reproduction.
that's
Okay,
that's
Finley,
not
go
really
ahead.
what a nihilist that's not really what a nihilist was saying. The point he was making is what you're saying is the larger the working population gets, the smaller people's wages get, right? So
Correct.
so basically what he's saying is, okay, that means that if we ever have population expansion from childbirth, which we have for I don't know, hundreds of years now, we should see wages summarily plummeting. They should go down because the population gets bigger and bigger, which means the working population gets bigger and bigger, which means that wages would get smaller and smaller. But this doesn't really seem to be something that's like super borne out. We can't find these old graphs of the productivity back in the 1800s slowly cratering as we reach like 300 million people or whatever. And I don't think you can find
But
the
women
same
always
for
existed even though
women
they didn't work.
entering the work. Sorry?
Which existed even though it didn't work, but new children don't necessarily exist until they're born. Comparing just purely the supply and people.
But no matter where the source is from, it's still expanding the working population, right? Like if we have a bunch of women who now enter into the workforce versus a bunch of people who turn 18 and start getting jobs, there's still going to be people entering the workforce, right?
Finley has a great point here, and actually it's it might be dangerous territory for the lefties, because when we get back into the 1800s, we don't have any studies. There be dragons here. Right. And so we're going to have to use our brains a little bit instead of the data. We're talking before the Industrial Revolution. We're talking, women. We're talking before, sanitary, which basically enabled them to not be completely reliant on men in basically every way. It's hard to overstate how huge that was for women. Just that one invention alone, and.
What invention? Sorry, you cut out.
Yeah, everybody's internet is really bad tonight.
Sorry, I mean, like
just me.
sanitary pads and whatnot for women. I've heard.
Wait, how did sanitary pads force women? How did lack of sanitary pads force women to depend on men? How did not having that force them to depend on men?
Because not having those sanitary pads, it caused like all sorts of disease, germ problems, stuff like that. I mean, you can read about it. Check it out. This is historical.
Why would they be more
dependent on men then? He dedicated 10 years to it. It's a crazy story. But it was an incredibly one of the most important inventions to women. Feminists will tell you that.
No, I agree with that. But why would having more disease make them depend on men more?
Well, they don't get the disease if they don't go out and do stuff as much. You see how it works? Men don't have that issue. Understand?
Wait, no, but if you're saying that they got diseases from having like sanitary pads and stuff, or sorry, not having sanitary pads, then irregardless of how much they go out and do stuff, they should get equally sick. It's not like the more you work, like the more periods you have or something. It's like pretty constant across all lifestyles.
I'll drop this point for the sake of the show, and because it's not really important. What matters is that basically before the Industrial Revolution, especially, the traditional family home was well established, and all of Western European culture, basically across all of the Western European cultures, followed these cultural models that we're now abandoning. And
Which
that's
cultural model? You mean the nuclear family?
no, I mean the
Yeah, no.
traditional Christian family home, which evolved into the nuclear family like in the 19th century. And I tell you,
actually,
we don't have these productivity versus wages graphs going back 300 years, but we do have them since like the 20th century. And that's really what's important, because that's after the Industrial Revolution. And what we see is since the 70s, productivity has skyrocketed. This is why it doesn't matter if there are more people. We don't have to like reduce the birth rates or something, which, by the way, we're not even meeting our replacement rates because we don't have as many families anymore. And they're bringing in immigrants in order to, like, it's all fine. That's how we're going to balance it out. It's just immigrants, because people are totally interchangeable. And it doesn't matter if the people here are dying. They're just, economic units for the businesses here, right?
I'm really sorry. What point are we making?
Yeah, there's so many disparate points. I can't even keep track of them.
Wait,
all.
so,
I
okay,
think
The larger point that I'm making is that all of this boils down to culture being so important, and a fundamental foundational part of our society that
okay.
that
But-
making
but
arguments
the-
like, well, if you don't want women in the workforce because it cuts wages in half, then you just want to kill babies too, right? Is fundamentally dishonest.
Well, so first of all, what you're talking about here isn't a cultural issue; it's an economic issue, right? We're talking about an excess in the supply of labor. That would probably be economic under most people's definitions. And second of all, I don't think you've adequately demonstrated that women working has reduced wages that much. Me and a nihilist could point to a million different things. We could talk about, for example, the fall of unions, the loss of manufacturing jobs, all sorts of things as reasons why, possibly productivity has been falling, wages haven't kept up with productivity. And you would also have to probably demonstrate that, even though I'm pretty sure most people agree here. Again, I think we're having another problem where we're going A correlates with B, therefore A causes B, where I could say, there's a million different things that also correlate with that fall in wages related to productivity. The airing of the Red Skelton show being taken off of the air, the rise of the internet, consumption of Klondike bars. All of these are equally correlated with the trend that we're seeing,
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I
you're
think
ignoring.
Go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, you're acting as if women entering the workforce is something that happened, which prompted all of the social and economic change after that. But this is fundamentally not the case. Women entered the workforce because of capitalism. They entered the workforce because of falling wages, and they entered because they had to make money. If your point is correct that women are generally meant to be caretakers of children, there would be no reason for women to enter the workforce in the first place. So why would this movement happen? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So the reason why go ahead.
Can I go?
Yeah.
It happens because people want to make money. I thought that was like a leftist talking point, is that people want to, the elites want to economically exploit people for money, and not because it's for their well-being. If people were pushed towards what is in their best interest, that's not actually what you'd see happen. You would be seeing them paying women to stay at home and take care of children.
I mean,
But
I
the
like
suffragette
UBI, I
movement-
like the idea.
The suffragette movement wasn't spurred on by these massive corporate interests, though. It was.
You're right. It was a social
based
change.
largely. Yeah, but if what G. Sneed says is true, then we would probably see it being spurred on, right? Because what he's saying is that there's powerful actors in the system, corporations, who have an incentive to make more money by moving women into the workforce. But women weren't moved into the workforce
they
by.
absolutely were trying to do that, and there were special protections put in place for women and children at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution because it got so bad. And yeah, women were pushed into the workforce as a part of a propaganda campaign set up by the Department of Labor, a lot of different groups, which were, I mean, again, feminists will tell you that this was all progressive achievements from pioneers who were doing this. As far as the women and labor things go, goes, there's not much, you don't need a study to prove this. You double the workforce, right? Men are half of people, women are half of people. So you add half on top of it, you double the workforce, you cut wages in half.
Well,
It's
I have a
it's a
solution.
supply and
I have a
demand.
You
solution.
guys, I
The-
think what we should do maybe really quick is maybe we'll have like the lefties will get 2 minutes and the right wingers will have 2 minutes, and we'll just go back and forth, and you guys can break that up like however you want, because so we have a little bit more of a flow.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So go ahead, G Sneed. We'll go with you and Mayo and Todd. You want to do some time?
Yeah, I'll throw 30 seconds up, and when 30
Yeah.
seconds comes off, your side's time is up.
And then you guys can go. So however you want to do it. All right. So go ahead, G.
Okay. I maybe we can move off of the like feminist. I think we've been sticking on like women in the workforce thing for a while. I wanted to try to move back into the current issues of the day and why I think that it's trending towards social in a bad way and economic in a bad way, and we're getting like the worst of both worlds. I think that's something that we could probably come to some agreement on, because I think the leftists here probably support a federal minimum raising, and I think they also support a lot of trade issues, and maybe we can each support one of those things and get along on something. We can actually get them to get rid of this uniparty thing we have going. So I thought about that.
I mean,
Yeah, that's a good point. If the leftists, just 10 seconds, if the leftists were more focused on economics than culture and the social issues, then their social issues wouldn't come along with their economics. And we could probably agree on a lot.
All right.
I'm
yeah,
not
so,
sure what that means.
Go ahead. The lefties can go now if you
What-
want.
yeah, so I have a solution. If you think it's a problem that all the women are entering the workforce and like and like increasing the work supply so much that like wages are being depressed, I have a perfect solution. Just allow the men who want to be stay-at-home dads to stay home. Problem solved. You can balance it out. It actually works rather nicely.
Yeah, this is the other thing is that this just isn't really true. Like I have a Harvard Business Review article right here that found that basically when you compare comparable cities with different gender regulations for working, increases in women in the working population actually leads to an increase of wages. The way that economics works isn't that there's like a giant like lump of money out there and then we just like divide it up amongst everybody who starts working. Like if you start working more, you can be more productive than you would be as a housewife or a homemaker or whatever, and start generating more value for the economy. And that amount of value that you end up generating comes back in the form of the wage that you end up getting paid. Obviously a lot gets skimmed off and sent to your employer, which I'm sure we all can agree is probably not great. But it's not that there's only a certain amount of demand for labor, and the amount of people who work is just the amount of money that people get paid is like this, whatever money is output by the economy divided by the number of workers. Increasing the number of workers can increase the productivity of whatever business you want to cite, and then increase the amount of value it creates, which increases the amount of money it creates, which means that you can actually see wages rise as the worker population increases.
I mean, yeah, the same thing goes. Like, if we raise the wages, then it would allow everybody to make the choice on their own whether they want to stay at home and be a parent, or they can continue working in the workforce for more money. It seems like that supports our point that economics comes first.
So that's actually, you have a great point about it being more economically feasible probably to reduce women to like corporate Amazon drones and like turn America into an economic situation where we're all just
Wait. Who's reducing?
Wait,
everybody
wait,
from
wait.
anything?
Right now we're
Hold on, you guys.
right now
wait,
you're
wait.
just leaving the point you made though now. Like, sorry, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Let them,
We're
let them
to
just
go.
go.
yeah, I mean
sorry
it's
about
Go ahead, Mia.
yeah, it's okay. I mean basically that's the fundamental difference is for us, we believe that even if it affects the bottom line negatively, that having women raising basically you can sum it up in this statement: women raising homes or raising children in the home is the backbone of any strong society and civilization. It's how healthy children are created. And I don't care what the studies say about like divorced kids or kids from divorced households are just as well off as kids with two-parent households, or that kids with gay parents are better off than kids with absolutely like the
Really
set of
quickly.
parents with that. Yeah.
Okay.
Really quickly, I'm
So-
sorry, I'm just going to explain something. So with the super chats, when people are doing the super chats, we are going to interrupt you guys to read them, and then you guys can respond to them. That is what we do with the super chats here. So from Base Homeschool Mom, do the lefties think that women going from only 5% to 50% of the workforce in just a few decades didn't have major effects on the labor market? So lefties. Annihilus, why don't you go first, and then Finley?
Yeah, of course that had a major effect. It increased the amount of productivity overall. I mean, this is pretty inarguable that increasing the population increases the overall productivity of the country that you live in. I mean, it's who's reducing anybody to Amazon drones or whatever but you. I'm saying that everybody should be free to make whatever choice they want to, and you want all women to stay at home and be like baby making factories. Like, there's only one person like dehumanizing women right now.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
I-
yeah, I'm with
Finley
Annihilus
answer
here
Go
that
ahead.
it seems like kind of a false question, saying that it did or didn't have a major effect on the labor market. Whether I agree that it had a major effect doesn't mean I have to agree that it had the major effect that Mio seems to think it did. So I don't think this question really gets at what we were actually talking about. And I think it's just an attempt to sort of make me answer yes to an obvious question and then sort of make it seem like the argument was won right there.
Well, it's because the argument. Yeah, it's because the argument is all embedded in the question right there, and it's essentially, adding that many people, dumping that many people into the labor market is going to reduce wages. It's
Then
exactly.
why can't you bring me a study that says that? Why
Well,
can't
you
you bring
don't
me a
need
study
studies.
that says
This
that?
is something that everyone's known for a really long time. Bernie Sanders said
Who's
this about
everyone?
10 years ago. Bernie Sanders, for one.
But Bernie Sanders isn't very
hold on.
smart on economics, though. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Let Maya finish, and then I know G Sneed wants to talk about something other than women, so we'll let Maya go, then Finley, Annihilus, and then G Sneed. You can pick us up to something different social issue if you want. Or something.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
The last thing I'll say on the women issue is that I don't believe that women being mothers, which is basically the highest virtue for women that there is in my worldview. I don't think that is reducing them to anything. I think that motherhood is, that's Mother Mary, the archetypal perfect woman in the Christian faith. I don't know
We're not
how
Christians.
that all plays out, but no, well, it's you can even look to, again, going back to culture and what our culture has been based off of. It defines the values, the art, the architecture, the fabric of a civilization, what people do when they interact with each other on the street, their work ethic, which defines economics in the end too, it turns out.
What? That doesn't even make sense. Christianity is 2,000 years old, but the Industrial Revolution is like 200. The Christianity did not change in that period of time fundamentally. It was Enlightenment ideals.
I'm not sure what you're saying.
I don't know where we're going with this.
let's
It seems to me
move
like
on.
we're just
Yeah,
sort
go
of.
ahead.
All right, so let's G Sneed, why don't you?
So I think the problem is we actually fundamentally agree on the whole economic thing in this debate in the first place, and what we don't seem to agree on is whether women should be only. Okay, well, let me finish. Maybe you can tell me whether that's true or not. We seem to agree that women should be able to choose whether they work at home or not. You guys do, and we don't. We think that they should be pushed towards working, not working, and being in the home. And that seems to be the difference. But economically, we both support, theoretically, both of those options. It's just that I think, and maybe Mio does too, that they should be pushed towards a certain direction that we think would be best for them.
Okay.
I think that we should also be economically incentivizing fathers to stay in the home too. I respect men. Men are great, and of course, it doesn't even fundamentally make sense that women's job is to make more babies. So as a woman, your job is to either make more women babies who grow up to make more women babies, or you make more men babies so they can join the workforce. either way, it's like circular logic. It only just perpetuates itself without doing any larger goal here.
Is this like
Well, actually,
anti-natalism?
I have a question for all of you guys really quick. Okay. So, all right. So I know we've talked about the woman stuff a lot, and I know I've heard some things being said where, with the LGBTQ stuff, I've heard actual people say that they would choose, being like poor over us welcoming those kind of communities in and normalizing it. I don't know. So I know that like with certain liberals, they might choose social issues over economic as well, but in a different direction. And I don't know, like I just think it's kind of interesting that, I've heard a lot of these conservatives say that they do want healthcare, they want all these things, but they're still choosing to go and vote for right wingers. I don't know, so
Yeah,
It's a good
if I
question.
could
Go ahead.
start, I would just say that that's something I would call a uniparty, where you get stuff that basically no one likes, both sides in the end don't really like, and is only really appeasing to kind of this nebulous kind of middle, everyone okay with it. But really, if you look at the polls, like I was saying before, more people want minimum wage than want trans acceptance, and yet which one do we get? We get the trans acceptance, we don't get the minimum wage increase. So that's what I wanted to address, and you guys kind of ignored that before, because I think it's a valid point.
I don't think
we're not getting either.
I don't think me and a nihilist, either of us disagree with that.
Okay, so I'd like to flip the question on
Okay.
you. To if you guys could choose to live in an economically prosperous country with your economic values being put in place, however, that same society does not involve any of the LGBT community or immigration, diversity,
Right.
all of it. Is that something? Would you rather live in that country than America as it is today?
I think
What?
ultimately it might have to be yes, because, well, if we live in an economically prosperous society, there's a lot of urbanization going on and a lot of people mixing around in the cities. So we're more likely to sooner or later come back up with all that LGBT stuff and progressive values just by the natural course of human history. Whereas if we gave all the power to the capitalists and just like concentrated wealth into like the 0.000 whatever 1%, there's no guarantee that we'll ever achieve anything remotely close to like worker, justice.
Man's got a point. What do you say, Finley?
So
I don't know, man. I think
Well-
I don't think it's a very interesting question.
well, Finley, like, actually, I think it's a little bit, but Finley, you are in. He's in Canada, so it's a little
I
bit.
am.
I don't think you have the same stuff that we deal with in America.
Yeah, actually, you're right. As a Canadian, you don't even have to say it has my preferred economic system. I would live in anywhere before America.
So I guess
I
that
see.
doesn't really
But-
apply, but.
But I don't know. I would have to think a lot about it, and I don't really think I have a satisfying answer for either you or for me right now.
Hey, I get it, man. It's a tough one. Whether your economics or your social issues are more important to you, I guess it's starting to come out, huh?
Yeah, so I mean, I won't dodge the question. I think it's a bad question because these two are fundamentally connected, as I've elaborated in my answer. But I mean, I will answer the question if I actually absolutely have to.
I dodged the question,
you-
a nihilist. I thought we were
you
friends.
you just said that everything will come back to trans or LGBT rights if everything is economically prosperous enough. Do you think that's true?
I mean, I don't necessarily think that's true, but I think it's much easier to go from economic justice to social justice than it is from social justice to economic justice. Because what's going to happen if you give all the ultra capitalists all the money? When the unions like try to rise up and like try to get more worker control, like the capitalists are just going to turn the white people on the black people, and then the gay people on the straight people, on the everybody people on the everybody people, and then just fragment the working class. It seems to be much easier to go from one direction than the other. But again, this is a false dichotomy. Obviously, social progressivism and economic progressivism are connected. And I see no reason to hypothetically vote for some socially regressive person in order to achieve worker progression. Let's
So
say in the
you're
real
telling
world.
me So
That
you're
seems
telling me that
contradictory.
if you were the capitalist, the evil, greedy capitalist corporations, that you would be pushing social issues like rainbow flags in order to distract lefties like you on economics from agreeing with us and
No, I
abandoning the
wouldn't.
social
No.
issues for economics?
They are now.
No, that would be silly,
Yes.
right? Capitalists would never do that.
What? Can
Look
you
at what happened after
reiterate your
Occupy
point?
Wall Street.
Oh.
I think what Mia is trying to say is that right now, the way that the status quo works is that like companies push like social issues like gay acceptance and stuff like that in order to preoccupy people's minds and divide like the populace or something, so that they don't push for better minimum wage or something like that.
Well, why is Goldman Sachs have a rainbow flag? Like, why? And they
Why
didn't
is
Because
before
they're
what?
Occupy
virtue
Wall Street.
signaling.
They're
They're
virtue.
virtue,
Yeah, well,
virtue signaling.
That's right.
just
They're
to
virtue signaling
increase profit.
social issues
Only
to
virtue
distract
Well,
you
but
leftists on the
the
economics.
reason-
One at a time. You guys, we're all talking at the same time.
Yeah,
all right, go ahead, Finley, and then we'll go to Maya, then Annihilus, then G Sneed.
the reason that this happened is just because you make money doing it now, because socially acceptable and the mainstream thing to think that gay people are human and shouldn't be like shocked to death or anything like that. But
No
I
one
think
in
if
America thinks that.
if the goal of I think like if the goal of corporations is to divide up people, so like people don't push for left-wing left-wing economic issues and only push for left-wing social issues, they're doing a pretty terrible job of it, because the Democratic Party pushes for both and doesn't seem to have really been affected by any of these like rainbow capitalism like pride parades or anything like that.
Well, it's interesting you say that, but it's the Republican establishment is now branding themselves as the party of social change. The Democrats are the real racists. The Democrats are the real homophobes. Here's all the rainbow flags and Miss Transgender, MAGA, whatever, at all the conventions. It seems like there's no party in America that represents the culture and heritage of the historic American people. And that maybe if someone who wanted, to oppose the capitalists would abandon their social issues, if their economics were more important to them, that they could get along with a large portion of the population who feels like they're not represented at all.
Yeah, the problem is they aren't represented at all. I mean, if there were really right populists, and I do believe there are in the American population, I'm willing to work with them on certain issues, but there are no right populists that actually believe in what they say in Congress, which is why I don't feel the need to form that political alliance just yet. So you come back to me with a political candidate who is meaningfully left on economic issues and maybe conservative on social issues, and then we'll talk.
Sounds good to me, friend. Might be making progress here.
Okay, G Sneed, if you wanted to.
Yeah, well, you call those people Nazis and Nazbols usually, and they don't get elected. So that's part of the problem here. I mean, Bausch did that whole thing with the Nazbol Vortex or whatever, and that comes from this addressing of economic populism on the right. And now they're saying, "Oh no, you took the what we had, which is economic populism. Now you're Nazi because we can't call you anything else." That's literally what it is. And I think that we need to go back to before Occupy Wall Street, when things were about the economic issues alone, and it wasn't, oh, do you have privilege? Oh, are you gay or trans? It wasn't about that garbage,
I have an interesting question for you. Would you guys be willing to, if you had like some Democrat in your district who was pushing for trans acceptance or gay acceptance or something like that, but was also pushing for a $15 minimum wage and unions and sectoral bargaining and so on, would you be willing to jettison your social issues and vote for someone like that who's 100% with you on the economics?
They wouldn't.
Depends how specifically bad they are on the social policies, actually.
As bad as Barack Obama in 2008. Let's go there. Let's start there. Let's start.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it's not your question.
And start returning
I don't know
there.
what you're doing. Like, actually, let me change it. Let's make it about Obama.
Well, it's because
Well, no,
in 2008 it highlights that like as little as 12 years ago, or 13 years
That
ago,
was a shift.
Barack Obama, the Democratic presidential candidate, and actually the guy who's primarying him, the main guy, were both running against homosexual marriage. And so that's like everyone just kind of forgot about that.
Hillary
But that
Clinton
was
was
the left's
primarying him.
position. I
The
forget what
guy
guy's
primarying him, Hillary Clinton.
Oh, I
name-
think he was talking. I think he meant McCain, but
who-
that
in
was primary
2008.
Clinton. Yes.
there was another black guy who was debating about this. I forget what the guy's name was because he didn't win. But it was a
in
serious
2008
candidate.
we weren't in 2008 we weren't talking about Medicare for all or a minimum wage.
Well, that's a good
Like-
Well, you
point.
weren't
I mean,
talking about
it seems
minimum
like the
wage
left
then?
has made a lot of progress on both the social
Or-
and economic issues, hasn't it? And the right has completely abandoned, at least the establishment right has abandoned all the cultural issues in order to win the so-called right-wing economics.
I mean, I don't think that's
What?
true. Like, Texas just
Look at all the state
passed
platforms.
a bunch of transgender sports, tried to pass at least a bunch of transgender sports bans. The one in Florida actually went through. Trump tried to ban Muslims and build a wall, which were both very popular positions. Trump tried to ban, ban transgender people from the military. There's still defense of like not being able to serve gay people because of their sexuality. The whole gay cake baker
understand,
thing, which is
we're
widely
talking
supported
about
amongst right-wing
transgenders.
people.
I mean, we're talking about transgenders now, but like 10 years ago, it was whether we're baking a wedding cake for gay couples. You've
Yeah, and
moved
10
the
years
ball
ago-
so far forward, it's unrecognizable at this point.
Wait.
No
But
progress.
where is
Big
it gonna
day for us,
be
right?
next?
Let's hey.
Wait, look at the Republican Party platforms, though. I'm pretty sure in all 50 states, they still all want to repeal gay marriage. So, I mean,
Yeah.
there goes
Well,
that
and-
point. I'm pretty sure the
and
Republicans
the
have
other
What
thing
do
is
you
I
mean?
don't
That's not gonna
I don't
happen.
know what point you're making, that like we've made progress on social issues comparable to the progress we've made on economic issues. That's kind of how like
No,
politics
we
works.
haven't actually. That's the whole point. That's why one is so far ahead and the other not. That's why so many
Wait,
more
what?
people that are
What?
talking about
How
economic
have we not made progress on economic issues when in a crisis comparable to 2008 we had significantly more robust and quicker and better put together stimulus, as well as economic conversation about a bunch of things like $15 minimum wage, about Medicare for all sorts of those things are now in the overview
You're not
window
far
now in
left
the
enough, I
mainstream and now
guess.
being made into policy. I'm not what?
You're not far left enough, I guess.
I'm pretty far
Okay,
left,
the
but
banking crash was the start of the problem.
I think the point that they're trying to make is that although we're talking about
Housing
Medicare for all and stuff like that, we're not actually implementing any of it. Like none of that
Well,
policy
that's
is
why
actually passing.
that's why I reference policy as well, right? So the minimum wage thing almost got pushed through. It probably wouldn't have happened back in 2008. I think it's now pegged to like an 11.60 minimum wage, which is still pretty big. The CARES Act is not the sort of thing that we would have imagined seeing back in 2008. The infrastructure bill is also really huge. It looks like it's going to pass, not the sort of thing we would have seen in 2008. I mean, and obviously I'm not saying that this is sufficient, but this is obvious progress that we've made since, the time period we're talking about, which I think went along with the social progress that we're saying that we made.
And if
I'll
you're
just tell-
complaining about the fact that like liberals and leftists aren't making enough ground on the economic issues for you to
We're right
jump
here
on
with you.
board, it's not really our fault, is it? I mean, it's the Republicans who refuse to actually elect politicians who are actually like economically progressive or economically populist. It's like we all agree that we
we're
should raise
Republicans?
wages. We all agree we should raise wages and help the working class. But as soon as like transgender people like peeing in the wrong bathroom gets on into the conversation, you immediately drop all your economic positions and go back to like voting for some politicians who just suck the thumb of like the big corporations and billionaires. Like this
Well,
is not
and-
our fault. This is yours.
I can't.
And we
uncut
also
my
don't
dick,
we
but I
don't
can make
all
more
agree
money.
with that.
Hold on.
Sorry.
Sorry, who was just talking? Was it G Sneed? G,
Sorry, I
go.
talked over.
No. You go ahead, and then we'll have Finley go.
Okay, my point is that you can't untrans your child and you can't uncut off your dick, but you can make more money, you can change your economic situations, but you can't undegrade society
So
at a certain
true.
point. And that's where we're heading. That's the issue.
Wait, what is the evidence that people being trans is decaying society? I don't get it.
Wait,
Where's the evidence that if you slice up a child's genitals and like mutilate it, that doesn't help, right?
well,
I
Let's
oppose.
get into
Look,
the meta-analysis of the studies about child mutilation. Like,
listen, we
Come
know
on,
that studies
let's-
trigger you, dude. It's okay. This also
I
doesn't
do
happen to
agree.
anybody under 18. There's never been bottom or top surgery performed on anybody
and
who's
there's
not.
nobody pushing for that, right? Like if
That's
you were at
false,
Gay
but-
Wedding Cakes 10 years ago,
But
you know,
this is the thing. This is the thing, dude. Is we're talking about something. You say something incorrect, and I correct you on it, and then we move to something totally different. We were talking about how kids are getting cut up. I say kids aren't getting cut up, and now you say, well, it's going to happen eventually. I mean,
there was
what am I
no,
supposed to
there's-
do
there's
here,
a-
man?
there's an
That
example
did happen.
in Texas. There's a kid who got taken away from his dad.
There's a kid who got
Because-
taken away from his dad and given bottom surgery.
No, they taken away from his dad because the dad wouldn't put him on hormone blockers.
But that's
or
not
whatever.
that's
It's
not
like
what
they
we're talking
absolutely
about.
are.
You were saying
Okay,
Oh, we're
cutting
just
up.
gonna mutilate this child in a
You
different
guys-
way. Okay, that's
Hormone
fine.
blockers
then.
are reversible.
All right, wait,
Until-
hold on
like-
one second.
like, can
Everybody's
I-
talking at the same time. All right, go ahead. Annihilus, say what you're going to say, then Finley, and then we'll go back to G Sneed.
Yeah, I absolutely abhor genital mutilation, which is why I want to get rid of circumcision. You know, but I'm not sure that you guys
want to
really
have a
care
debate
that
on
much.
this, actually,
I
if
mean,
anybody's interested.
yeah, but like the
Based?
point, like hormone blockers, they're reversible. Like nobody's doing bottom surgery on children, and even if they were, like this is in consultation for years with psychologists and psychiatrists. Like people aren't just like walking into like some clinic and saying, "Hey, chop off my dick and give me a vagina." Like this is not what happens, and there's no real evidence that some people chopping off their dicks is making our society become fundamentally worse. Like this is a very weird line of logic you're going down.
Yeah. Well, I think they'll probably be with you on the circumcision because it's a Jewish thing, so I'm pretty sure they'd be against it.
No, I'm Jewish,
But
I don't
yeah,
remember.
just what Annihilus said. I mean, this doesn't happen, and I think it's telling that you know that this doesn't happen because when I asked you for evidence, you
Get to us
brought up
about
a
the trans
completely
shit again, really.
Wait,
we went to a completely different universe. We went to a kid who was taken from a parent and given to another parent, but not for anything to do with top or bottom surgery, not to anything to do with like anything like that. You were talking about hormone blockers. And again, we come back to this thing where you say something and then just completely retreat from it. We teleport to another universe where we're talking about a completely different topic.
Right. See, personally, for me, I don't think that what everyone knows is like irreversible. Is he
But
talking?
again, we're on another topic now.
Yeah.
Like,
So I
we're
think
talking
that,
about we're talking about now surgery in general. Specifically, what you said is chopping up little kids' dicks. That doesn't happen. That just
Well, it
doesn't
does,
happen.
but in a different way.
So you put them on hormone blockers instead. I mean, is that really? So are you still arguing for trans children? That's what we don't like.
What do you
you understand
you
how
advocate
you
trans
understand
children, we
how
know that.
there is a shift. There has been a constantly shifting goalpost that begins with baking wedding cakes, and it ends with genital mutilation, man. It's
I mean,
like
I could,
Where's it gonna
I
be
could
in
say
10
the same
years?
thing about minimum wage. You know, previously we were talking about a $7 minimum wage. Now we're talking about a $15 minimum wage. Where does it stop? At the $1 million minimum wage? At the $2 million minimum wage? Like we can
Based.
slippery slope any
That
position
you can
into
actually
complete
quantify. You
absurdity.
can't.
I'll tell you this. I'll tell you
Yes,
this.
no.
much. If you go
Progressive
back,
values, you could.
Wait, hold
Go
on.
ahead.
if
Go
you go
ahead,
back
keep
to
going.
10 years ago and you say,
Mhm. And 10 years ago, we weren't talking about Medicare for all.
Oh, the internet for everybody's not great right now.
yeah, sorry, that's
I-
an economic issue. If you go back 10 years ago and you tell somebody who's arguing about the wedding cakes, that in 10 years they're going to be arguing hormone blockers for children or they take them away from you, the whole debate would have ended right there.
Yes, we've
don't see-
advanced pretty far in 10 years. I
Yeah,
mean,
like, this
what's
is-
your
I-
point?
This doesn't make any sense because we could say this about like literally anything in existence, right? Like it seems weird for you to say that it's possible that this will collapse into absurdity or do something that we don't like at some point in the future because that's tangentially related and somewhere way further down on the ideological spectrum of what we're talking about right now. But again, you can defeat literally any idea with something like that. You know, we wouldn't have Like, imagine having you know, a presidential candidate on the debate stage talking about UBI 10 years ago. I can make the same point and say America's on track to you know, go full MMT and try and give everybody $12 trillion a month, and you know, take literally everybody out of the workforce. It seems really really bizarre that we're making this special exception and saying that there's this massive slippery slope for social issues when we won't make the same argument for any issue in existence. Because if we did, obviously we wouldn't support anything at all, because it can be slippery slope into something we don't like later.
Again,
Sure,
like,
I
where
mean,
are your priorities? Like, again, this, like, transgender people are like 0.1 to 3%. They're like a small fraction of the entire population, and you're getting worked up about some people choosing to cut their dicks off when, like, economic issues affect everybody. So you're gonna drop the minimum wage and all that stuff to support a Republican politician who's still gonna lower the taxes for the rich and do all that bullshit. Like, what are your priorities here?
Well, I mean, it's good bringing it back to that, you know, the social versus economics as well. But I still hold the position that I mean, you can say like, well, it's a slippery slope, and you make that up with anything. But you know, trans queen kid story time or whatever has been real for like years now, and everyone saw it. And the leader just got arrested for like child porn or something. It's literally all true. It's like
I mean, it's like
just a
Christian
trajectory. We're
priests
just
have been
looking at
getting
a
arrested for
trajectory.
molesting kids for the last 50 years. What do you mean?
Not nearly at the rate
And we
of
demonize them for
genders
that.
As
and
one guy?
homosexuals. Actually, if you want to talk about the rates of pedophilia in the homosexual
this is
community
wrong.
versus the Catholic priest
Okay.
community, I'm happy to go there with you.
You're running
don't wanna
away
go
from
away.
the question.
Hold on, you guys.
actually
We're all
can't-
doing this again. Okay, so G Sneed, then a nihilist, then Finley. Go ahead, G.
I just find it weird that it's not entirely obvious that maybe it's because you guys are young. I really don't know. But I remember when, like, gay marriage was not even a thing that people even thought about. It was basically like very fringe. And now if you don't accept gay marriage, you're in the minority. So that's what I'm saying. We're not even saying it's just fanciful. We're literally just looking at the past and trying to project into the future. It's very simple. We have a lot to work with already with this whole movement.
Yeah, and I don't know, like homophobic societies don't generally turn out very well. But again, like, you're not actually answering the question. You're like running away from the point of the debate. The debate was whether or not economic issues are more important than social issues. So whenever I talk about the fact that raising the minimum wage is far more important than worrying about what 1% of people are doing with their dicks, like, you keep moralizing about people cutting off their dicks. Like, why don't we first focus on like getting people to have a living wage and shit like that before we worried about anything else?
Here's why: because to us, the social issues are the priority, and they're more important. And if you
But a
cared about the
nihilist-
economic issues more than the social issues, you would abandon those social issues and work with us. But you won't, because the social issues are a package deal with the rest of it for you.
Well,
Why don't
this
we have
doesn't really
just
make
the
any
social-
sense
Hold on,
because a
economic-
nihilist,
Hold on. Go ahead, Finley.
a nihilist isn't like president. Like, it's not like whether or not he holds a certain thing or presents his beliefs in a certain way is going to be the deciding factor in like a universal, you know, like the scales balancing over American society. It doesn't really make much sense for some random guy. Like, I'm a nihilist, I don't want to shit talk you, but like some guy who's not like a national politician or a national figure or anything to weirdly like curtail and curate and power game his beliefs for the you know, maximal ability to get a $15 minimum wage, when that he doesn't really have like a ton of power over that. Like, I'm sure if you got a nihilist in a call and you guys just went over economic positions, you guys would all agree, and you would probably vote for candidates with similar economics positions if given the chance. So I don't really see what the point is in what you're saying. Like, it's not like a nihilist is standing in the way of us getting all of those economic positions pushed because he doesn't want to bring back conversion therapy or something.
Well,
we seem to be only.
Hold on. Okay, yeah. Go ahead, Mayo, and then a nihilist, then G Sneed.
Yeah, it's just very, very quick. It's luckily this conversation isn't being had just strictly for a nihilist's sake, and so you know, hopefully, you know, there will be some progress that's had from these conversations, not just this one, and moving the ball forward in American politics so that all of these people gathering here together can sort of figure out, find a new consensus, things that we may agree on, common ground, move the ball forward with policy issues, economic policy issues that don't come along with all of these new social issues, which a huge portion of America is categorically against.
Okay, so now a nihilist and then G-Sneed.
Okay, yeah, again, I'm not fundamentally opposed to like the premise of abandoning social issues to like accomplish economic justice, but again, there's no politician in the national stage that actually accomplishes that. So if you want us to have that conversation, we'll have it, but first present a politician who actually helps us in this front rather than virtue signal about it like the way Josh Hawley and Donald Trump do. They don't actually contribute.
Okay, now G-Sneed, you can hop in.
Okay. So the point is that we agree. I keep saying this. We agree on, even Finley said, we agree on the economics. Why can't we're not going to vote for a Democrat who will have really bad social policies for us and really good economic policies for us? I think at least I won't. So the point is, why don't we have a candidate with just economic issues and we can both vote for? That's what they do in some other places with multi-party systems. They focus on a single issue and it actually works. If we just have two parties,
They don't have
we
that kind of
both won't
diversity, I
vote
think.
for.
No. That's not how multi-party systems work at all. I live in
Wait,
Okay,
yeah,
well,
your
tell that to
argument-
most countries.
Your argument fundamentally
I live in Canada.
Yeah, your argument fundamentally is, well, we're not willing to give up on our position, so why don't you just come to us and give us everything we want? Like,
No,
this is not-
the argument
this is not
is that
bipartisanship here.
we have a different priority than you, and if we both choose our priority over the other one, we can work together.
So if your priority is social issues and I come join you with a politician who prioritizes social issues, it seems like we're just going to get social regressivism and not actually any of the economic stuff that I actually want, which seems to be what happens whenever a supposedly populist gets elected to the right.
Yeah.
So I think one thing that could come from this conversation, we could all, it seems, agree that we would all be willing to vote for somebody who was not on board with any progressive social change, so-called progressive social change, but was left-wing economically. Is that something everyone here on this panel can agree to right now?
Well, not exactly. It depends on how bad. I mean, if they want to like kill all the Jews and stuff like that, then obviously no.
Oh
There's a
my
point
God.
at which like it's not worth it. You know, like
Well,
I'm
I
willing
don't
to
know
make
of
minor
anyone in
concessions.
American politics who's advocating for killing anybody. That's, sounds
so
like
I have a
Why do
question
you
for the
go to the other
liberals.
side? Like, what
the other
Wait,
thing-
guys, I have
the
a
other-
question for the liberals. Hold on, quiet. I have a question for the liberals.
yeah.
Say that there was a politician that was economic, and actually for the conservatives too, but there was a politician that was doing all of the economic goals, but they just didn't police actually I think this is more for the conservatives. They just didn't police the social issues. Like they didn't talk about them at all.
That's not what we have.
No, I don't
mean,
think
that's-
so.
So
I think that's
someone
what
who's just
people
agnostic on all of these things.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's all we have. Like
consider
for
voting for
us.
them, sure.
like someone who would abstain on every social issue, or like not vote on it, or
Somebody who wasn't pushing but wasn't also fighting it.
but they were left-wing economically. That would be something I would seriously consider. The problem is when this comes down into policy stuff, the way that these politicians do things is they make, huge, giant 200-page bills that the politicians get to read like starting the night before. So, that would it always includes a lot more than you think.
With the
we have a
right wingers that voted for Bernie.
No.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I mean, we have a solution to those like huge 200-page bills. Like
Wait,
get
wait,
rid
wait.
of the
literally went to the
filibuster.
Soviet Union. In
Wait
the
a
80s.
second.
What the hell?
So Mio,
Go ahead, Finley.
wait, you're
Go ahead,
telling
Finley.
me that you're not willing to ally with people who have different social views than you, even though that's what you were just telling me and a nihilist to do?
No, not well. That's because
Well, you
you
just
were
said you
saying
wouldn't
that
vote for
economic
Bernie.
issues are your priority. I'm saying that
I
social
never
issues
said
are
that in my
my priority.
life.
Let him answer. Go ahead, Maya.
Okay, well, my position is that social issues are my priority over economic issues. If it were up to me, I would rather live in a less economically successful country with an intact traditional culture, a homogenous culture at that.
Why don't you move to like China or something?
You know, it
He's
could
not
work out.
Chinese.
It could work. Get an Asian waifu.
Yeah, I think you would
Maybe
be a
like
hot
Kathy
commodity over
Zhu.
there. Yeah.
I think
Um,
like, well, it sounds a little bit like Handmaid's Tale-y.
Yeah.
Is
But I think one thing I want to go back to is the idea that in multi-party systems there's like solely economic or like solely cultural parties. This isn't this is
I
not
no, I
true.
didn't say that. That's not what I said. I think you're misrepresenting me.
Well, what did you say?
What I said was they would sometimes come on specific issues, that even though they were completely opposing parts. More often than they do
internet
here.
Sucks tonight.
Oh, is it
Well,
dying?
I don't think
why
that's.
don't you
I don't think.
sign out and sign back in or something? Maybe it'll help.
Okay.
Yeah, so are we on about like the 200-page documents with a bunch of like hidden details? Are we on about that now? Because again, like we have a solution to that. We can get rid of the filibuster. That way we don't have to package all of our policies into like this huge bill that nobody can agree on or even read. Like,
Oh, is that
there's
why
the
you want to get
solution.
rid of the filibuster? Is that
Oh, that's
why?
one
And
reason
now-
why. There's
now-
one. That's one reason why.
Right.
Like I think a lot of the problems that you hear about things being smuggled through with budget reconciliation or something is because in the modern American political climate, it's impossible to get something 60 votes in the Senate, and if you don't get 60 votes in the Senate, you don't do anything because McConnell is majority leader. I mean, like it's sort of a bad option either way, but I don't think that the solution is just to like stop passing legislation, because that's really the only alternative that we have, other than smuggling things in through like procedural things, a nuclear option with budget reconciliation, so on and so forth. That's really all that's left to Democrats if they want to get things through, and that's why they have to pack so much in.
Again, like I haven't really heard too much of an explanation of why you prioritize social issues. I mean, you've talked about trans people, which is like 1% of the population. You didn't really you didn't really elaborate on that. I mean, like, why is it? Because it seems like the more progressive we've gotten throughout society has generally gotten better. The most homophobic places tend to be the most repressive places. The most progressive places tend to be the most prosperous. So what is it that makes you prioritize social issues?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to say that like America has gotten better in the last 20 years, I think like anybody who's been walking around can tell that that's not true. It's maybe America has gotten richer in the past 20 years, and you know there's something to that. But as far as our culture is going, there's a reason why white flight is so famous and why that's happening. There's a reason why the people are moving out of the cities as demographic change takes place and different cultures, multiculturalism especially, takes over. With transgenderism specifically, that's a perfect microcosm of the entire issue, because it's an example of the social leftists trying to upend entire foundational institutions, such as we have 2 bathrooms everywhere we go for a 0.001% margin of the people. This is not how civilizations can be run successfully. It just doesn't work like that.
Well, we used to have 4 bathrooms. We used to have like one for the white women, the white men, and then the colored women, and then the colored men. Is that what you're talking about? That like we should prevent white flight by preventing cultural mixing? That's your argument, that we should resegregate ourselves?
Voluntary separation.
Oh no, I wasn't saying anything like that at all. That you know, forced segregation, anything like that at all. Actually, it turns out that without forced integration, that's what people naturally do. Not make their own bathrooms or whatever, but they move to their own communities and live among their own people. It's what people do when they're left free to choose. It turns out that people like living among people who have their own same culture and agree with them. You know, it's like Muhammad Ali put it. He says, you know, like bluebirds fly with bluebirds and eagles hang out in the mountains, and they're all birds, right? They just got different cultures, and that's okay. That's how God made everybody, and it's not to get religious about it. That's what he said.
Okay, so you're talking about different cultures, but you also said that like you're also talking about how like different cultures are worse than other cultures, right? And how like cultural decay is making our country worse. So which types of people do you think have worse cultures?
Oh yeah, so that's actually a really good question. To clarify what I was saying is that it's the nature of diversity and multiculturalism itself that inherently causes conflict. You know, it's like a lot of people like to say when the colonizers, the evil colonizers first got into Africa, they drew border lines without any consideration for which ethnic groups were within the same borders, and that caused conflict because you had several different ethnic groups who had several different belief systems and cultures who all had to be shoved within the same space. And it turns out that doesn't work out too well. You know, leaked Amazon documents showed the same thing, that they track which statistics make a store more or less likely to unionize. And it turns out that the more diversity a store has, the less likely to unionize that they are. And if you just think about it, you know, use your brain. What does it take to have a union? Well, it takes unity. It takes, you know, people in a sense of oneness among a people. And that's less likely to happen the more diversity you have. You take that principle and apply it to society at large, and there you go. It's not an inferiority or some culture is worse thing. It's the nature of the diversity itself which causes conflict.
So basically, you're saying race mixing is bad. I mean, there's no evidence to actually suggest that. In fact, the evidence suggests the opposite. I mean, people in urban areas are more progressive
This guy
and
is
more
gonna
willing.
channel force. So you're saying me. So you're saying that.
This is.
Sorry, go ahead,
Oh,
Finley.
dude. Okay.
I mean, I haven't finished.
So
Okay,
the
fine.
idea
Fine.
that
Let
white...
I was finish and then go.
Yeah, it will be
Yeah,
really
sorry,
quick. 'cause
sorry, Alice.
Yeah,
You go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, people who live in urban areas encounter people of other races and other cultures more often than people in rural areas. Yet they tend to be far more progressive. Like the idea that like race mixing causes conflict intrinsically, it's not supported by the data either. I mean, I can link a few studies to support that, but yeah.
You're just mixing up cause and effect, actually.
Go ahead, Finley. Finley's
Okay.
like dying to get in there, so go ahead.
Yeah, this doesn't make any sense. I don't see what the correlation between white flight and like transgender people or gay people is. Like, modern urban white people are among the most progressive groups in the country. I mean, like on a lot of measures, they're more socially progressive than like Hispanic or Black people even. So I don't think it really makes much sense for progressive white people in urban areas to be fleeing away from the policies that they themselves support on more than almost anybody else. And then the other thing would be, a lot of social science research has been done. I can probably find you papers afterwards that finds that actually exposure to other racial groups decreases tension, decreases prejudice, so on and so forth. And there's a great example of this in United States history, where basically back at the start of the 19th and 20th centuries, like Irish and Italian people were both seen as separate, racial groups from the rest of white people who were culturally and socially inferior, treated horribly. People didn't want to mingle with them. Then over the course of 50 years, as more people got exposed to each other, as people mingled and race mix and exchanged cultures, they assimilated easily, and the United States didn't tear itself apart, even though there were literally massive waves of Irish and Italian immigrants that were huge percentages of the US population coming in and causing conflict at the start. They assimilated easily. That bigotry sort of fell away. That sort of multiculturalism was a successful experiment, obviously, because today Irish Americans and Italian Americans are contribute well to society, generally occupy the higher strata of economic quintiles, so on and so forth. So it doesn't really make much sense to say that now all of this diversity and all of these different races are going to cause all these problems when we had the same problem in the past and it basically worked itself out.
Well said. Well said. I'll have to say my retort to that would be that of course, we've had immigration since basically the foundation of America. We've had Irish immigrants, German immigrants, Italian immigrants, all in different waves, which lasted about 15 years and were, like a few million people tops, right? A small percentage of the country, proportionately speaking. So we're not fundamentally changing the demographics within a couple of voter cycles. Now, that being said, also, the idea that I agree that Irish and Spaniards and Germans and they all considered themselves completely different cultures from each other. However, even still, if you went back to those times and you went from one village to another, and then you went to sub-Saharan Africa or China or like Latin America or something, you would see which ones you could pick which ones are closer to each other than the rest. Okay. and some are more likely to be able to assimilate into similar cultures than others. And all of that, given all of that, we've taken in now, since the 1965 Hart-Celler Act, over 60 million immigrants in the past 60 years. Okay, there's only 340 million people in America. You do the math on what percent that is. And there's 20 million illegal immigrants on top of that they want to give amnesty to. So this is all way too much. The idea of wanting to stop this mass immigration from other countries that are way different from Western Europeans is not racist or supremacist. There's nothing like that. And talking about how cultures and bringing in people with different cultures in these kinds of numbers brings diversity, which causes inherent conflict, is not racist or saying that someone is worse. And that kind of intellectual dishonesty is really getting old. And that's a part of why we can't agree on the economic issues, because we're called racist about our social issues.
Oh yeah, so you're not racist.
Well,
you
I
just
think
want to
in that
segregate
case
the
you should.
races, right?
Yeah, I think in that case you
Don't know when I
should
said
love Mexican immigrants, because Mexico is an incredibly deeply Catholic country. I think greater than like 80 or 90% of Mexicans are Catholics, whereas people in Europe are gradually becoming more secular and progressive. You know, they're basically the anathema to your social views. So I think if this was really something that you thought, you would be pushing for more Mexican immigrants.
Is America disability?
Sorry?
Oh, yeah.
I think America is actually for the people who built America. It's founding European stock, and I think those.
Okay, so
people
now we're
should be
changing our argument.
prioritized. What do you mean you were changing?
Oh, sure. No,
I
it's
think
all right.
Houston and Maya might have different arguments on this one,
Okay,
particularly.
yeah, sorry.
Because
I'll
Maya's
follow
Catholic.
down this path.
So go
yeah,
ahead, man.
yeah. So essentially, where were we?
Well, so the building block of American society is strong Catholic religious
right,
culture.
Mexicans. Right,
There's
Mexicans.
stronger Catholic religious culture in Mexico than in Europe. So
Yeah. So I would say that's actually a really solid argument. However, it just so turns out that Mexicans, just like every single other non-white demographic, vote in a supermajority for hate speech laws and to take guns away, which are like the top single voter issues in in historic American people, alongside abortion being one of the last big ones.
but that's not
hate speech
necessarily
laws?
true. First of all, like if Mexicans are deeply religious, you would expect them to strongly oppose abortion, which would be great for you. And second of all, there's obviously an incredible capacity for the right wing to persuade Hispanic voters to their side. In the 2020 election, Donald Trump made massive gains amongst the Hispanic community. You know, Miami-Dade County literally won him Florida. There's messaging on the right that can and will resonate with these people. It's not as if they're just they're inculcated into the left wing, and there's nothing we can do to bring them over.
It's a cultural difference. The fact is that they all vote, especially first generation immigrants from everywhere, vote majority Democrat. That's a well-known
Then why
fact.
would you? But
And
then why would
especially
you?
with Hispanics actually going into 2, 3, 4 generations down, they vote increasingly Democrat. It turns out.
But the problem is that you're treating this as if it's something fixed, where I just outlined to you an argument that indicates that it's not. You know, it's
So
very
when you say he
it's
gained
very
massive
possible.
ground, you could say Donald Trump gained massive ground in the black vote too, but they've still never voted less than 90% Democrat, basically.
Well,
But
neither-
I could say 80 and be definite.
neither have like college educated white liberals, which would be the majority of the immigration you're getting from Europe.
I wonder what that is. And you're saying that I'm falling for propaganda.
They're not all Jews. No,
I'm kidding.
no, you're not, and it
we are-
worries
we
me
are gonna
because I
get
don't think
into
you know what
Q&A
European
steps,
people
so
are.
keep
It's
going,
not all
Tyler.
just Israel over there.
What in Europe? What are we talking about?
I'm saying that you can get non-Jewish immigrants who are white from Europe. It's possible.
Well, who started talking about Jewish?
My parents were not. Okay, all right, never
Who
mind.
brought up the Jew stuff? You brought up the Jew stuff.
That's me. I have
Well,
nothing.
in that case, it seems like we would have equal amounts of problems with high-skilled immigrants from Europe, because they would end up being college-educated white people, who vote overwhelmingly for Democrats.
I mean, yeah, basically, I would say let's stop all immigration from everywhere right now and sort out what's going on in our country, like right now. How about that? Europe, everywhere.
you realize what would happen if we did that, right? The population
then-
would immediately start to
but-
shrink, and we'd
Good.
like we'd
Yeah,
basically
because of
fade
the
away.
people
and
aren't
live
meeting
away.
a replacement rate, and so replacing them with third world immigrants isn't the answer. Solving the problem so our people don't die out is the answer.
What do you mean, your people? I mean,
Our
if they
people, the
immigrate, they're
people who are
Americans.
in America right now.
Well, I'd like to go. I'd like to.
America
like-
is
I'd like
American
to-
is not a legal status, man. It's like it's a people. It's a nation.
I would like
A
to go back to
nation of
something you were
what?
talking about, like
People.
a little earlier. Or sorry, Nihilist, I'll let you go.
Yeah, a nation of what? White people? That seems to be the basic point.
No,
that
there
you're
are
pointing at.
That's how it was
there are
created.
plenty of minorities who have adopted the historic American cultural values and heritage, and they absolutely agree with even what I'm saying right now, which is that these cultural values need to be enforced, and it turns out that we need them in order to keep the civilization running the way that it has.
Oh,
And
we need
whether you think or I think that requires the country to be comprised of majority Western Europeans, which is like the people who built this country. That's like beside the point to me. What I'm talking about is
But
culture.
the problem is that Western Europeans, again, are going to vote for Democrat just as strongly as other voting blocs that you're excluding because they vote for Democrats, even more strongly.
but
if we talk about like
when you talk
European
about
countries,
white people basically vote 50-50 on most of the big issues, and especially in presidential elections. They're the only demographic that does, actually. Everyone else votes in a vast majority for Democrats. Everyone
But
else,
you're talking
every
about-
other non-white demographic.
but you're talking about specifically the white populations that exist in America right now, whereas immigration from Europe would likely be overwhelmingly college educated. If you talk to a lot of pollsters, they'll tell you that the voting patterns of non-college educated and college educated white people are so different. You could basically consider them like completely separate groups. Just like you said, they split 50-50, and the Democratic 50% is the college educated white people you would be getting from Europe, where the Overton window is already very far to the left of where it is in America right now. I have some
I
information
completely
on this somewhere. I can dig it up for you if you want, but recent European immigrants vote very, very strongly for Democrats, so it doesn't really make much sense for you to
I totally
exclude
agree.
them.
I want no European immigrants either. The British people who want to take our guns away, they can, stay home.
Dumb liberal
Okay,
Swedes.
Okay,
But-
so
Is that racist to say that about like British people, or is it
But
only
in that-
like
in that
white
case-
whites?
But in that case, why not? Why wouldn't we just like let in all sorts of immigrants and then just make them take like, I don't know, an "Are you right wing enough" test or something like that? Or
How about we just go back to like the immigration patterns that we've had for like the entire time this country's existed before the Hart-Celler Act?
Well, I mean, but the entire time this country existed before 1980, we didn't have personal computers. Just like the fact that we did it for a while doesn't mean that it's the ideal way to do things.
I mean, so computers now make it so like the entire culture of our civilization needs to like fall apart.
Do you
That-
do you
because of
think that
computers?
computers have massively changed the culture of our civilization? Like the rise of social
yeah,
media,
for the worse.
atomization. You ever read Bowling Alone? Well, then do you think
Have
we
you
should
ever
get rid
read
of
the Bombers
computers?
Anyone who says that's a good thing.
okay, so it looks like
do
you're
you think we should get rid of computers then? Because that seems to be the same argument. You're saying that immigration and
I
computers
promise
both have negative cultural effects. Because of
I
the negative
promised I
cultural
wouldn't
effects, we
start-
should axe computers, or we should
I
axe
promised I
immigration.
wouldn't start Kaczynski posting.
We're
during
gonna go Kirill Kaczynski hours now.
okay. So you're saying that you want to enforce some like cultural standards more in America. Which you keep vaguely gesturing. Which cultural standards do you want to enforce exactly? So, because like we know that if you cut off immigration completely, then our population would start to fall. So you would have to encourage more people to reproduce. So yeah,
Oh,
how
no,
would you do
imagine that.
Which
Imagine that the people have families and reproduce. It almost sounds like it's all connected to the women
Yeah.
issue I was bringing up before.
yeah. So which
Women,
people do you want to
moms, babies.
reproduce?
It's the same thing. Culture. Wow.
Yeah. So which people
Wow.
do you want to reproduce?
The American people.
But we already
Who?
cut off
Who are
immigration,
Americans?
So which
the
Americans?
people who are already here right now with American citizenship status. Let's start there.
Okay. Anything else?
Well, I think
Nope.
if we did that, we'd run out of white people pretty quick.
Well, yeah, because we're not meeting our replacement rate, and no one seems to have a problem with it
But-
because we can replace ourselves with third world immigrants. I have a problem with that because I don't want our bloodlines to die out for forever, just so America can be an economic zone. I care about that.
Well, whose bloodlines do you prioritize? Just like the bloodline of anyone who's in America
Sure,
right now?
let's start there. American citizens.
So wait, so what?
over just
Why
like the
is
global
someone who
whatever?
why is like a second generation like immigrant any more American, or like a first generation immigrant? Why are these people more American than like anybody anywhere else around the world? Do they just magically become American when they step onto our shores?
It's honestly a great point. I think that you and I could have a great
make a lot of them.
conversation about outlawing birthright citizenship and chain migration as well.
Well, in that case, you're not really answering the question, because you just sort of said it was a. You just sort of talked.
No, I'm agreeing with you.
Around something
You
else.
made a great point that
Well,
those people, how are people who come to America and just set foot on our shores and obtain some sort of legal status or whatever through some deal Joe Biden gives them, as American as the people who have lived here for generations, whose families built and shaped the culture of this society, the people who arrived here on the Mayflower and since, how are they as American? It's a very good question. I'd like to hear your answer.
Well, but what you're saying is that they are American, because you're saying the people we should try and, keep going are the people who are in America right now. But it doesn't really seem to there doesn't really seem to be much of a distinction between those people and people anywhere else other than geographic location. Even like the white people who are here right now, for example, if someone left America and like went abroad for a year or something, you would right now be saying that we should kick him out and not let him back. It seems like this sort of idea of Americanism that you have is really incoherent, I guess.
Nobody's talking about kicking anybody out at all. That's why I was saying that the first solution has to be closing the borders and stopping the inflow of new immigrants now. And we can sort out, the people who are in the country right now. We've had waves of immigration before, and you know what? The people assimilated over time, given that they were a small enough minority and there was a large enough period of time without any new immigrants for them to assimilate.
That's not true, though. Like over the course of the late 1800s, like there was literally exponential growth in terms of Italian immigration. It happened at the start of the 1900s as well. Like it's not like there's just these sudden like rises and dips, and it rises and dips. Like this has sort of been a gradual thing that's been slowly increasing over time. And the other thing is, I don't see why you would
Google American immigration over time. Anyone who's watching this can do that right now. American immigration over time. Go to images and look at the chart and see the rises and dips, which he just said aren't real.
Are these adjusted for per capita, or are these absolute numbers?
It's like every single chart. This is how it works. We've taken in immigrant. I mean, I know the history. We've taken in. At first, we were like, I don't know the order, but at first we took in Irish immigrants for about 15 years, and the charts will say this. And then we stopped all immigration for about 20 years or something. Then we took in, whatever's next, Italian immigrants, and then for about 15 years we took in a few million of these immigrants. And then we stopped all immigration because they knew obviously these are different people and they need time to assimilate. If we just bring them all in right now, it's not going to be America. It's going to be that people's country, except here.
Okay, so what's wrong with that? I mean, you just said that different cultures aren't necessarily worse.
Yeah.
So what's wrong with that?
I don't really.
What's wrong with that is that I want my culture
I still haven't heard it.
And just like everyone else has a chance to.
Okay, so let's just go one at a time. Annihilus, and then let's get G-Steed in there too.
Was there a Q&A? Wasn't there a Q&A?
We haven't done the Q&A yet, you guys. We are going to get to the Q&A. I am jotting down any of the questions you guys have because we'll be able to get to them after the chat's gone on for a little while. But if you have any questions, tag politically provoked and who it's addressed to, and we will get to them all. All right, so sorry. G-Steed, did you want to, or no, Annihilus and then G-Steed.
Oh no, I didn't have too much to say. I mean, it just seems like it just seems like they're dog whistling white nationalism without saying it outright.
Yeah. Well, we still haven't really. I still don't really see what a coherent idea of like what makes someone an American is. Like, is it just is it just like, you know, the longer that your family has been here, the more claim to the land you have? Because in that case, I think that you know, the First Nations and Aboriginal people should be kicking us all out.
Yeah, so I think, well, I think it's kind of silly to say that like the you know, First Nations people are like the real true Americans, and that's the real American
But
culture.
I mean, but why
All
not?
They're not
fair to
white.
that, right? Let's all live in teepees
But
because that's what America's really like. You know, that's it's just not honest. If we're talking about
well, I mean,
the
wait.
historic
So
American
what?
culture of the American people, we're talking about, and actually Justice Scalia, you know, rest his soul, is he talked about diversity in exactly these terms.
Justice Scalia and immigrants.
Justice Scalia, he said, look, I'm an Italian guy, and I used to get offended when my professors would talk about the Anglo-Saxon countries, le pays anglo-sax. He said, my French, Swedish professors, this clip is on YouTube. He says, my French, Swedish professors, they used to say that all the time, and I'd get upset. I'd say, hey, look, I've got an Italian faith. My name is Scalia, and I'm as American as anybody. And he said, what's the big deal with this? What's going on? And he said, I'd never been there before, but at the end of, my year at college, I went and visited England, and you know what? I felt at home there. He says,
Okay,
the nursery
good for
rhymes,
him.
things like when I say row, row, row your boat, you know what comes next. These people coming from third world countries, they don't know what
They
comes
can't
next.
say
They have
row,
their own
row,
culture.
row your boat.
Well, it's
That's the
exactly right. They
deciding
have their
factor.
own culture. They have their own songs. They have their own language. They have their own
nursery
culture,
rhymes.
history. They have their own nursery rhymes. It comes down to every single thing in
Italians
it.
have that. Oh
Comes
man,
down
dude.
to every single thing in a society. You can make fun of it. This is something a Supreme Court justice said about how this is the culture, the common culture of the historic American.
I mean,
people.
I could find you
culture, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, America,
You don't know.
Britain. They all have way more in common than any of these other third world countries where people are coming from. And if you can't admit that those people are closer to each other in culture than the rest, you have to be dishonest.
This absolutely
or something else.
isn't
Okay, so
true though. Like I have
hold on.
friends from.
Oh, sorry. I think I accidentally muted you. But
Right.
okay. So I do want to get G Sneed in there a little bit more. We're gonna be going into the Q&A soon, you guys. So
Yeah.
we do want to
Can I
kind of
go
start.
after?
I'd
Yeah,
love to address the white nationalist bit there for a second.
All right. Yeah, G Sneed, I want to get you in there. Let's get you in there first, and then we'll do Finley, Mayo, Nihilist, and then we're gonna go into Q&A, and we'll do final thoughts after the Q&A. So G Sneed, go ahead.
Okay, well, I mean, like, if you want to call thinking that America should have the majority ethnic group that it had historically a white nationalist, then I guess I am. But I think a lot of people think that they don't think Jews are evil, or don't think that necessarily there should be no non-whites in this country. What we're really just saying is that America has been historically majority white, and it seems to best that way, and we just want to keep it that way. And I don't think that's even really that wrong. I'm Jewish. I can't even be a white nationalist by most standards. I just think that the country runs better with white people running it currently. I don't know. I think that I also don't know where mixed white people would even go. Everyone has a country. Japanese people have a country. South Korean people and North Korean people have Koreas. But where do mixed white Americans go? They only really have America. That is an ethnicity now.
Okay, so Nihilist.
Yeah, so I think one of the fundamental problems with the argument that you're making is that you assume that American culture is something static, that it doesn't change, and that it's been white from the beginning or whatever. I mean, the whole point of America is that it's not Europe. It's not made of one ethnicity. It's made of many different ones mixing together. Our popular culture is in many ways dictated by what happens in Black America. They're hip hop, and before that, jazz and the blues that has seeped into American culture and fundamentally changed how it's evolved. And same thing with Latin culture, and same thing with Asian culture. American culture is about change. So trying to stop immigration to stop American culture from changing is fundamentally it's in opposition to the nature of America throughout its history.
Yeah. this just doesn't really make much sense, because again, all of the things that we're protesting about, these people in third world countries, maybe we can say that they don't speak our language, they don't know our nursery rhymes. No one coming from Italy spoke English. No one coming from Italy knew row, row, row your boat or anything like that, and they all assimilated pretty easily. And again, there's a lot of Western European countries that are less in line with the cultural values that you're putting forth, the ideas of Catholicism, blah, 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 than other countries, for example, again, Mexico. It just doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, I guess. And again, I guess on a personal level, even, I have friends from Morocco, from Dubai, from Tokyo, from Shanghai, who I have way more in common with in terms of values, in terms of, things that we enjoy, in terms of shared experiences, all sorts of things than I would have from someone who, grew up in some tiny town in America, or probably several of the people on this panel. It seems really weird to essentialize this along racial lines. And when a lot of the criticisms and grousing that we can do about people from third world countries, or from, from Mexico, or from wherever, we could do the exact same thing about, immigrants that are coming in, or immigrants that came in 100 years ago, or that are coming in now and are just white.
Yeah, so great questions, actually, especially, I on a personal level appreciate you taking up the row your boat example. That one's, I hold close to my heart. But yeah, essentially, you're absolutely right. Those people were, despite speaking a different language, having their own nursery rhymes, they were able to learn ours, because after taking in a small portion of them as a small portion of the population, we waited. We stopped all immigration, basically all immigration, for like 20 years. And this happened with every single big immigration act in America's history. Is after a short period of immigration, we had an assimilation period. And it makes sense that it logically follows that's what has to happen next, in order for a new culture to not completely take over the American people. Now, as for the other issue, which is why should it matter if that even happens, which a nihilist brought up, is I can't imagine that anyone could make the argument that what George Washington and the founding fathers had in mind was that what Africans and Indians and Mexicans are going to be replacing their people as their bloodlines go extinct in their own countries because it's managed so horribly. I don't think that that's what they had in mind. Well, it doesn't matter where it's going to be Africa now. It's going to be, Latin America or India now. And we're going to be, replaced with aristocrats from these other developing countries as our people don't meet their replacement rate and slowly go extinct. I don't think that's what they had in mind. And I think any sort of reading of the Constitution or the Federalist Papers or whatever that includes that is fundamentally dishonest and erroneous.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
this is just not true. Like I'm sorry, and I'll let a nihilist do this, but this is just factually incorrect. Like, the percentage of America that was immigrant or foreign born just literally rose and rose and rose and rose from 1960 to 1920. It was a 60-year period where a lot of these, Italian and a lot of these Irish immigrants ended up coming in. It was a straight 60 years where the trend just went up and up and up and up and up continuously. There wasn't this sort of weird, like, up and down and up and down and up and down. You basically saw a massive rise until the 1920s, until the 1920s, and then a bunch of xenophobic acts ended up getting passed, and then we had Hart-Celler after that, and then the number of immigrants started to rise again.
You see, what
it's
you
not
just did there. The xenophobic acts are exactly what I'm talking about the stopping immigration for assimilation.
Maybe we could set up a debate
years?
on this, you guys. Maybe we can set
after
a one-on-one
60
debate on this.
years.
Yeah, we already moved off the topic so much.
Well, yeah, and I do. Let's get into the Q&A because we did. Go
Yeah, I had
over quite a
something to
bit.
say.
All right, go ahead, Annihilus, and then we're gonna go into the Q&A.
Okay, so I don't know why you're citing the founding fathers and what they intended for this country, because the founding fathers, they allowed slavery to happen. I mean, slavery was so much a part of Southern culture that they tried to secede in order to preserve it. I mean, I don't think we should be arguing about what the founding fathers wanted, or that our culture is just constant and shouldn't change in some sort of way. And of course, man, I think I lost my other point.
It's fine.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, sometime we can set up probably a debate on whether the Civil War was about
yeah.
slavery. I think that would be a good topic.
Oh yeah, that'd
Oh
be
yeah,
a great
I got it back.
topic.
The other thing I would say is just that the percentage of the United States that's foreign born is actually lower now than it was in like 1890. Back then it was about 15%. Today, as of 2018 or so, it's about 14%. So I just don't know where you're getting all of these ideas from.
And the other point is that
These
like
rates are about the same.
like part of your argument is that you can let in some people but not too many people because then they can't learn the language. I don't see how that follows. I mean, we have the internet now. I mean, it's people are connected like people across America are connected to each other more than ever because of the internet. It should be much easier to integrate than it was back then. In fact, you could make an argument that back then people in California and people in, let's say, like Virginia had very different cultures, and that we have a more solid, like, unified culture today than ever before. I mean, this argument of cultural, like a static culture just falls apart once you analyze it from any lens other than race, which is why we feel pretty comfortable calling you white nationalists.
Yeah.
I'll
I'm not
let you
white,
have
so
the
I can't
last
be a
word
white
on that
nationalist.
for the sake of the show. But I will say I never brought up race once in this entire discussion. I've been talking about ethnicity and culture. I just wanted to make that distinction.
Okay, we are going to
You
go
did,
into the
though,
Q&A. We are going to
repeatedly.
go into the Q&A. If you, I think that maybe there's a lot more to be said, and we can set up some one-on-one debates because I think that would be good. So we're going to cut that now and just get into the Q&A. So you guys start sending them in. I did write down the ones that you had, but let's just get the ones I can pull up. From Big Papa Fascist, asked Finley when he thinks the Italian immigration wave started.
I don't know, man.
Okay.
Like I didn't come here prepared to debate Italian immigration. If you want, I can like read up on it for a week and get back to you.
Okay.
Well, I'll tell you that an important statistic, a relevant statistic to this question, is that America was like close to at least very close to around 90% white until 1965.
Okay, but we're not talking about. So we are talking about white. I thought you just said you weren't talking about race.
Well, I mean, all right, I guess. Well, again, I'm talking about ethnicity. However, you'd like to
Mask
define
slips.
the majority Western Europeans. Yeah, until 1965, it was 95% white people. So that is, I mean, if you find that irrelevant or like a racist statistic, I'm sorry, but
you
that's
you
just
said
a real
earlier.
true history fact.
You said earlier it wasn't relevant. You said that you weren't talking about race at all.
Oh no, I'm talking about ethnicity and culture, and again, using the term white to represent, you know, Western Europeans and largely categorizing their collective culture as it's relational to the rest of the cultures in the world.
But we already agreed that a lot of Western Europeans have cultural views that are antithetical to your own. Like even back then, like there's Western Europeans who are in favor of abortion.
I completely agree, and at this point, we need to cut off all immigration from everywhere because everyone else is not Americans.
Well, now you see my problem here, right? Is because you said that it's good that we have all of these white people because they agree with these cultural ideas I have, and I said actually they don't agree, and you said exactly that's why we need to get rid of all these white people.
I see. For me, it's I didn't bring up that they were white as in like if we only had more other white people coming in, that would solve the problem. The reason why I brought that up is to show that the demographics of America have fundamentally changed. And that the people who America used to be is no longer who the majority of the people in America are going to be. And that represents a major change in the demographics and the voting and the culture and everything.
Okay,
let me ask you a question.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Niall.
Let me ask you a question. Am I American? You don't know my race. You don't really know much about me. You just know that I'm a socialist. Am I American?
Were you born in America?
Yes, I was.
Yes.
So now if you're born in America, you're an American?
That's the law.
I don't share any beliefs basically socially with you at all. And yet I'm American and some like conservative Catholic family from Mexico isn't. This just doesn't make sense in any way.
No, it makes perfect sense. And yes.
All right, let's move on. Because we're going to get some one-on-one debates for sure, I think, from this. From Eric Pone, and I'm guessing he meant Mayo. Ask him how long he's been racist and nationalist.
Oh, well, how long I've been racist and nationalist? Well, guessing it depends on what you mean by racist. I started recognizing that all of these facts about demographics are true probably within the last 2 years. As far as nationalism goes, it's been basically since I heard Donald Trump say Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo. And the American people will come first once again with the respect that we deserve. That's when I became a nationalist.
Okay. All right. So.
Wait, I have a question.
All right.
Is it possible for other people to jump in and like answer the same questions?
What do you mean?
I mean, they're
Oh, you
directed at
wanna
certain
have a
people,
crack at
but
that
like
one
we want to like respond, right?
He wants to answer when I became a racist. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I think I lost my train of thought that I was going to interrupt with, but yeah, just
Okay.
moving
Sorry
forward.
about it.
All
man.
right. Well, we're gonna continue on. From Big Papa Fascist, Finley claims Italians immigrated easily, yet he doesn't know when the way. Okay, that's not a question. All right. So.
I think wait, I can pull a figure off the top of my head. I know it was 4 million from 1980 to or 1890 to 1914.
Okay. I have some that I jotted down from earlier in the debates or in the panel, whatever. From unrelated coma, the kid in Texas who a judge ordered his father to not interfere with the kid's transition was James Younger. He was 7 when his mom. Okay, that's not a question. Brainwashed him into being
Good
trans,
point,
but that's
though.
not a question. All right, so from base homeschool mom, question to Finley: does he think widespread acceptance of transitioning kids won't result in more and more extremism regarding surgery? Do you
Well, I
want me to
mean,
read that
if
again?
it does, I don't support that. But I don't see it. I don't see why the fact that a belief I do agree with could in the future give rise to a belief I don't agree with means that I have to throw out all of my social prescriptions and all of my social views. Why can't I just agree with what I agree with right now and then campaign against that next thing if it ends up coming up? Like, this isn't how we do politics in any other area.
I know a lot of people who said that about wedding cakes.
Okay.
Okay.
Based homeschool mom says, I want to point out that cultural issues dominated this debate, so it seems cultural issues are more important than economic ones.
What?
Doesn't
No,
really
because
make
we
any sense.
agree.
They
we agree on
dominated the
economic
debate
stuff.
because yeah, we're not going to sit around for an hour and a half talking about how much we agree about the minimum wage.
Okay, so from Cut Sleeve, who does each debater think did the best debating today?
What question is that?
I don't know.
I'd say
I guess
Brittany. I'd say Brittany. We love Brittany. She's the best.
Yeah,
She's smart
Brittany's
and
the best.
talented and gorgeous, successful,
Nailed
and she
it.
looks great tonight. Obviously.
So that answers that. Okay, so from Goat, shout out. Okay, I'm not doing that. Nice
That's who
try.
was in Paris. That's who was in Paris.
Nice fucking
Based?
We go to homes that I had down before. From based homeschool mom to all 4 thoughts on former Soviet bloc countries in Eastern Europe having communism and becoming more Christian, traditional, and nationalist. And she put cultural over economic
Ooh,
issues.
economic
So,
issues.
Anilus, why don't you go first? And when
Well, I didn't hear the question.
Too, but all right, let me ask it again.
This former communist countries
Can you hear me now?
became like more Christian and nationalist.
I mean, they weren't
Who did we just
communists.
lose? All right, so she said that thoughts on former Soviet bloc countries in Eastern Europe surviving communism and becoming more Christian, traditional, and nationalist.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't communist in the first place. They were basically red fascists if you analyze all their policies. So, I mean, it just gives credence to the idea that so-called like Marxist-Leninists, they're basically just red fascists.
Yeah, and
Okay.
so actually, it's a good question that these countries, which were basically terrorized by the Red Army, have recovered, have restored their nations. I see a lot of architecture being restored in these nations. I see their cultural values are being enforced stronger than ever. You know, you see countries like Hungary and Poland that are outright making laws about this transgender stuff, about homosexuality. They're making laws to promote families so that their people don't, die out and go extinct and need to be replaced with immigrants, like we all think seems to be a good idea here.
Wait.
And yeah, I'd love to see a lot more of that here. I hope we don't have to go through communism first.
Wait, you know the Soviets also promoted family values, and they were pretty socially conservative, right? I don't think any of them would have supported transgenderism either.
The communists who want the women in the workforce and not to be a means of reproduction or whatever Marx said, those are the ones promoting family values. Is that
They
what we're
weren't
going?
communists, that's why.
They
Okay,
weren't
so
real communists. It's the Soviet Union wasn't real communism. Please don't do that with me.
Okay, so let's get G-Snee to answer, and then Finley. Do you want me to read the question again?
I'm sorry, I
yeah,
lagged out.
It's fine. I'll read it again. She says, for thoughts on former Soviet bloc countries in Eastern Europe surviving communism and becoming more Christian, traditional, and nationalist.
Yeah, I'll actually take an opposite tack on Neo. I think part of the whole Marxist-Leninism was about protecting some family and some sort of social conservative values. The problem was this has been corrupted into some kind of racial oppression narrative instead of being a class oppression narrative, which actually sort of helped them to some degree. But they got rid of their atheism. They still kept to the traditionalism, so it just ended up going back to Christianity.
All right, Finley, you're muted.
I
Do
don't
you want me
know.
to repeat the question?
I'm not from Poland. I can't answer questions about countries I know nothing about and I've never been to. I guess I could say that extreme situations tend to lead to extreme political ideologies or whatever. But you know, if Poland and Hungary are doing that, that sucks, and I don't like that.
Or it's
All right.
based and awesome, and they should do it more.
Okay, so
Right.
from
Well, if Mio likes it, I dislike it even more.
Okay, so progress. From unrelated coma, how does getting rid of the filibuster make any sense compared to prohibiting rioters? Rioters?
Rioters?
Maybe he meant to say rioters, but it says rioters. So yeah, I don't know. If you want to explain that one, if you're still here in the chat, what you meant by that, but we can move on to the next and see if he kind of clarifies.
Aren't riots already illegal?
Yeah.
I don't know if he meant to say. I don't know if he meant to say that. It says riders, like RIDERS, but let's just move on to the next. Oh wait, riders are He says riders are things that get added to bills. Okay.
Well,
So
wait,
how
so-
does what prevent riders?
So he says, yeah, how does getting rid of the filibuster make any sense compared to prohibiting riders?
I don't know how you could have a functioning legislative system if you prohibited having things added onto bills. And I don't even know how you could reasonably enforce that rule.
I think he's asking how it's related because I was talking about these riders and the huge giant bills, and your response was that eliminating the filibuster would help with that.
No, the reason
I don't know how it's connected either, honestly.
Yeah, no, well, the reason that a lot of things get passed through with budget bills or stuff like that is because they all have to be packed in there because those are the only things that can pass the Senate with only 50 votes.
I see.
So the way that
Doesn't
the
sound very good to me. I wonder if there's a way without changing something as fundamental.
Oh, there's another way. We can get rid of the Republicans.
Yeah, the way that
we probably don't agree with that.
Destroy the GO. I'm not saying
the way that
with primary voting in totally legal ways. Yes.
All right. So Joseph wants to know what your favorite meal is. I don't know if we could ask everyone that. So Nihilist, what's your favorite meal?
Well, my personal life is unimportant.
Oh God, again with this. Okay, we'll go to Finley.
I've been eating fried rice a lot. I try and stick to either salmon or chicken because usually like pork or beef aren't super great for you. Usually I think once or twice a week, sometimes I'll either make like a stir fry or like a pot of shanko nabe, which is usually pretty good. Just, put a bunch of soy sauce on it or something, and you can't really, and the vegetables actually taste good, which is fascinating. But I think usually what I go for when I'm like super hungry is I'll just fry up a salmon fillet and then throw some like soy sauce and brown rice on the side there.
So,
That was
Disney, what's your
extremely
favorite meal?
elaborate. I enjoyed
That was a
Um,
huge answer for me. What's his favorite meal?
I like
Definitely.
Japanese ramen. I go to like fancy ass Japanese ramen places and get like the pork spicy shit. It's good. I don't know.
All right. So
I think you
Maya.
can't. Yeah, I think you really can't beat a good steak. You know, it's like the best kind of meat that there is, obviously, and everyone knows it. And we can try and convince ourselves of reasons why it's like wrong to eat it or something. But you know, pretty much no one denies that it's the best.
How do you take it?
What? Oh, medium rare.
Oh yeah, I mean,
I don't eat-
okay, I will answer the
are
question
you
too.
gonna
Homeboy
answer
doesn't eat
now,
his
then?
steaks rare. Is he even a real right winger?
Oh no! Out exposed.
Yeah,
How
I
could
mean,
you do that? I wasn't prepared.
aren't you glad that there is ramen in America and that like that sort of thing got integrated into American
We
culture?
didn't need to
You know,
bring
it's funny.
Japanese
Did it.
people here to have it.
It's funny. There's actually a book on this. I'll spend 15 seconds on. There's a book by George Borjas called "We Wanted Workers," and it essentially talks about exactly what you're saying, that the American people are dying out and they're being replaced by the corporations who are just trying to keep wages down. And that essentially, and all the economic benefits that we talk about that immigrants bring to this country actually go to the corporations and themselves. And it's the people who are already here who miss out on the whole thing.
This
And
is
basically, the only advantage for those people is the food.
I can't
Okay,
believe
yeah,
we
so
somehow
about
managed
the
to get
food,
into this
though?
big debate over a fucking
this isn't-
meal question. You guys are impossible.
So just
All right,
tax the
moving
rich.
on.
All right,
Yeah, we're
yeah,
moving
I
on.
deserve that.
All right, so from Goat, do you believe on any limit on immigration, and also why are you not doing that again?
So true, King.
This fucker. Okay, so do you believe on any limit on immigration? I'm guessing that's
Oh.
for the liberals. So, Finley, you want to go first?
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh.
that was your answer. I thought, okay, you're saying yeah, you'll go. Okay, so Nihilus, why don't you go?
Not the ones that exist right now, but I'm not necessarily super in favor of open borders. So there you go.
Yeah, this thorough fucking answer for his food question. Yeah. All right, go ahead, Nihilus.
Yeah, so I'm conceptually very small government. I don't like it when the government draws arbitrary lines and tells me what I can and can't do. So in an ideal world, we would have open borders, but that's not the world we live in right now. There are still some economic considerations. So I'd
Okay.
like to increase immigration in the short term.
Sorry. There's this guy in chat called the Great Yosh who just said Japan stole from Europe without becoming Europe. And I speak Japanese. I've lived in Japan. This is one of the most insane things I've ever heard in my life. Like half of the words that you hear in daily conversation in Japan are literally English loan words. Okay, they're literally like half of Japanese celebrities literally have English names instead of Japanese ones. Like you can Google Becky, you can Google Gact, you can Google I don't know, fucking Hyde. All sorts of different parts of English and European culture have been assimilated into Japanese culture far more than almost any other country's culture has been assimilated into America. This guy has no idea what he's talking about.
It's funny. So you're saying
think
a
you just made our
homogenous
point for us.
demographic, homogenous demographic, what nation just assimilated, just took all the best parts from every culture that they wanted without like being replaced demographically? Is that what you're
I
saying?
mean, look at their population.
No, they
though.
they got bombed after World War II, and then America reconstructed the country.
I mean, look at their population.
So that's what happened. So that's why Japan has adopted and become America without becoming America or whatever the guy said.
I don't care what the reasons were. The guy just said something that was incorrect about the country.
All right, we're moving on. All right, so from Vader Vita, apologize if this is off topic. It has been brought up already, but how do the debaters feel about transgender individuals serving in the military? Let's start with G Sneed.
Obviously, no. For obvious reasons.
What are the obvious reasons?
If they're already mentally ill and not well and dysphoric, even by other terms, then they shouldn't be in the military. And if they need all these hormones and stuff to keep them not quote unquote dysphoric, then they shouldn't be in there anyway. And there's such a small portion of the population, why should we make rules for them?
Based.
All right, so go ahead, Maya.
I don't think I could have put it better than Sneed. Is mental illness. It's like, I mean, the thing is the suicide rates are like what, in the 40%? It's like how are you even sure that like when you need this person in combat duty or whatever, they're
Well,
going to
you
be
don't.
alive?
You don't. The United States is in an active war with most other countries. Almost all transgender service members that are in the military right now work in non-combat or administrative roles. In fact, most of the military works in non-combat roles right now.
Okay, so
It's
like
not
the
like
idea that like we don't need the military right now, so like we should let mentally ill people.
but
very
people who are working in administrative roles right now aren't going to be like rushing to the front lines all of a sudden like overnight. And even if they were, why wouldn't we just find other roles for them in the military, since they're already doing
Why
them
don't we
fine
just
right now?
find other roles for them that aren't in the military? Like,
Wait, what?
military seems kind of important to me. I think that having
Wait,
people
but-
that mentally ill
Wait,
in the
what
military,
role do you
the
you
problem
want
is
them to serve in?
something not in like the military at least. That's
Well,
for
the
sure.
problem is if you're excluding mentally ill people, you're excluding a lot of active servicemen today. Like the rates of PTSD, of depression, of all sorts of these things among veterans and active duty military people are massive. It seems like you should
Yes.
be precluding, I don't know, like 5-10% of the military right now, completely outside of transgender people. What you're really
the
worried about is
military-
mental illness.
The military basically, I mean, they do have mental screenings that to stop people who are too mentally ill from getting into the military for like exactly that reason. It's like you need to be able to depend on the guy next to you, and that's the whole point.
But you need to be able to depend on the guy next to you who's in a non-combat administrative role.
I
Do
mean,
non-combat administrative roles not matter?
Yeah, it's still critical military infrastructure. It's like this is the guy whose job is to press the button that sends the urgent message or whatever. It's like if it's not important, it's not in the military, man.
Wait,
But
Guys,
you-
we do
but
have to
can-
get,
but you-
guys,
but
we
you
do
can't-
have to get to
just
some of
move
these other
on.
questions. So
Why don't we just test for mental illness directly
Well,
instead of being transgender?
and the other thing is there's been Pentagon reports on this and they didn't find any real major difference in performance between transgender individuals and cisgender individuals in terms of their ability to perform the services they needed from the military adequately.
Until
Like,
they commit suicide. Sorry. You have the last word. You have the
this
last
didn't
moving
get
on.
borne out.
Yeah.
We're moving on. All right. So from Tajbin to Mayo, why do you think that making women who contribute to every sector of the workforce boxed in to being baby makers would improve our means of production and progress or quality of life?
Yeah, good question. So basically, I reject the premise that women being mothers, which to me is like the highest virtue for femininity and enemy that there is. It's essentially it has nothing to do with the means of production for me, and it's all about the quality of life. It increases quality of life for women. It's actually, if you look up the studies, like the happiest women in America are married with between 1 and 3 kids, and are stay-at-home moms and have sex 2 to 3 times a week. But the unhappiest women in America
Something you can't
are
sympathize with? Or-
the unhappiest women in America. I'm not married, unfortunately, so that would be a sin.
Yeah.
So the unhappiest women in America, it turns out, are unmarried. They're single. They have no children. They're career women, usually doctors or lawyers or scientists, something like that. And they're between 30 and 40 years old. This is the unhappiest demographic of people in America. And so saying that these are the empowered women and moms are the one who are boxed in is absurd to me. And it also outright rejects the children, which should be a priority over women's happiness, in my opinion.
This isn't true. I think there's a really good literature review by Scar, Phillips, and McCartney called "Working Mothers and Their Families." You can get it off the APA website if you have an academic login. And the headline is basically that there's no real major difference in happiness between women who are working actively or women who are staying at home with their children. I can probably find you a bunch of
that's fine. Without getting into the study, I'll concede that point and still stand by my point that the outcome of the children should be prioritized over the happiness of the women.
Fascinatingly enough, the same study actually found that there were no major differences in outcomes for children.
And what about the men?
parents,
Well, the
with the
same
mom
literature review.
in the home or the mom at work? You mean?
The mom, no matter what, even if the mom worked, even if the mom was at home the whole time, no difference.
Yeah. See, that just doesn't make any sense to me. I think any
Well, the
mom will
problem,
tell you that children need their moms, and if they don't have their moms, they turn out different. Pretty much any like any kid who didn't have a mom could tell you that too.
well, okay, so
Right, so
my mom, again, I could go
okay.
back to earlier and say
Fist
that
up
my
and
mom
then-
worked
and
an
then we're
incredibly
gonna-
Go
worked
ahead.
an incredibly
Wait, I
intense
didn't
schedule
interject
and still had time to be a really good mom, you know, give me a very good upbringing. I'm on a pretty good track in life personally. And I really feel weird when not only do all of the anecdotal experience in my life, but all of the actual data that I've looked at has completely contradicted your point. And you can't really give me anything to combat that except for saying, well, if you go out and talk to moms, even though all the moms I've talked to disagree with you on this.
And I feel pretty confident saying that men who have more families and family time also tend to be happier. I mean, and of course we haven't even gotten to like gay marriage and the fact that like two men can also raise a child pretty reasonably well. I mean, so yeah, I mean
Alright,
there's a
guys.
men's angle from this too.
Okay, so I'm gonna move on. All right, so from Andrew P, with where Trump's wall is right now, what would any of you do about it? Keep it, finish it, or leave it? Was it just a waste of time and money? Let's go to a nihilist first.
I would probably leave it, maybe just let it crumble into dust as time passes. I don't think it's worth like even spending the time to tear it down. I think it's maybe a good idea to just leave it there half finished as a symbol of like the way we defeated Trump.
Okay, Finley.
I don't know, man.
All right,
well,
so
probably not finish it. I don't know if you want to tear it down to do something else with the land or just like leave it. I don't know, leave it sitting there. I don't really care either way. I mean, it's not like it's going to make it hard for anybody to get over the border, anyways.
all right, G Sneed.
Symbolically, it would probably be good to finish it, but I mean, really, it's about the policy, not the physical wall necessarily. But the physical wall is one part of the policy.
All right, Maya.
Pretty much with G-Sneed, it's the policy is more important. It really doesn't matter if we have a wall if the legal policy is like taking everybody. So
Exactly.
Okay, so let's see here. I'm gonna go through some of these. Okay, let me get caught up, but let me do the ones that I freaking wrote down. My internet's been crashing too. Everybody's internet is so bad tonight. All right, so from Big Papa Fascist, ask Finley why we need to immigrate labor citizenship other than feelings.
Well, immigration represents an increase both in the supply of labor and the demand for labor, and generally has positive effects on the economy. I can find you at least five studies that prove this. I can send them to you whenever you want. We can talk whenever you want, but that would generally be my argument: is it just leaves the country better off?
All right. So from Based Homeschool Mom to the left, why do you think motherhood is demeaning to women? Nihilist, why don't you go first? The nihilist.
Okay.
There?
I don't think motherhood is demeaning to women. I think it's demeaning if they're forced to be mothers. But yeah, I think it's also not demeaning for men to be stay-at-home dads. Like, just let people do whatever the fuck they want. Like, who cares?
I think strict gendered rules are demeaning to both genders. The idea that women shouldn't work is pretty demeaning to women, and the idea that men shouldn't be a stay-at-home parents is pretty demeaning to men. Because obviously it implies that there's some sort of genetic inability for you to do something that is probably going to be a pretty important part of your life and a pretty essential part of your happiness and self-actualization. But I don't think inherently being a mother is a demeaning thing.
All right, so I think we are gonna close it there. So let's get if you guys want to do your final thoughts and closing statements. Finley, why don't you go first?
I don't know what to say. Invest in solar, or get your congressman to invest in solar specifically. It's important. We don't want the entire planet to be underwater. Yada yada yada.
All right, so G-Sneed.
I think we basically came away with this knowing that we do agree on economic issues, and we really, 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 really fucking disagree on everything else, basically. So I think what that means is that we need to find as a country, well, you're Canadian, Finley, but as America, we need to actually focus on economics only, and then maybe we can actually come along as a country first, and then we can get to the other stuff, whichever way it goes.
Okay, Nihilist?
I don't have too much to say that we haven't already gotten over. I mean, it's just that it seems like no matter how much we agree that the economics can affect everybody and that changing the economy will fundamentally alter the lives of the working class and all people in America, we still get caught up on small issues like what the color of people's skin is or whether or not they're allowed to chop their own dick off. Like small issues like this completely separate us and make it so that the nominally left-wing economic right-wingers in this panel are willing to completely abandon all their ideology economically and side with people who would just suck the dick of big business over and over till the end of time, and they're apparently okay with it.
All right, Maya.
Yeah, so I would say that G. Sneed basically hit the nail on the head there in saying that our opponents, we seem to agree with a lot economically, and that, looking at the current political landscape in America, we seem to have two corporate-backed parties which are pushing sort of the same economic policies, at least a lot more similar to each other than towards the people here in the panel today. It seems like a very common complaint that I'm hearing from the populist left is that it's the corporate Democrats against them. And that's something that we, are fighting very similar issues. It just turns out that everyone's all together on the social issues. The big banks, the corporations, the media, everybody is pushing the social issues as hard as possible. And these guys are falling for it and allowing that to become more important than their economic positions. If they were truly the priority for them, then we wouldn't have to debate this hard about cultural issues. And they would say, you know what, fine, we don't care about cultural issues. If we agree on economics, then, then what's the problem? We're not getting that. We're getting more names like white supremacist and racist just for our cultural beliefs. And that's exactly the problem as far as I see.
All right. Todd, you have anything before we close this down?
Nah, good to go. Thanks for everybody for coming on. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I would like to thank you guys all for coming on. And if you guys have anything else you guys wanted to debate, we can set up a one-on-one debate. Am I lagging because my internet is acting up again? Can you guys hear me okay?
Nah, you good.
It's so annoying. All right, so yeah. If you guys have anything that, like some unfinished business, we can always set up a one-on-one debate. I'm sure, Mayo, that a few people are going to want to debate you. But thank you guys so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. And tomorrow night we have another panel, and it's going to be with Mrs. Fascist, and we'll have Bastiat, Mike Harlow, and Sonzel, and we'll be discussing we'll discuss the week's events and then how each political ideology defines morality differently. Saturday, Big Papa Fascist has a back-to-back debate. He will be debating at 7 p.m. Eastern, Marcy on trans issues. And then at 9 p.m., he'll be debating, what's his name?
Gorillas and
Infrared. What?
Gorillas, sorry.
He'll be debating Infrared on tanky communism. And then Sunday we have another debate as well. So yeah, if you guys are not in our Discord, make sure to join it. Let me put the link in one more time. And that's not it, so I'm not going to do that. But I think most of you guys are in it. But yeah, thank you guys so much. And I think we can close it out. So good night, folks.
Thanks for having us.
Bye-bye.
You got it.